Lord, thank you for everyone here. I just pray that as we go through Bible study, that we don't focus on having every question answered, but that we just have a good time and explore the text and, just come to learn the text as you have us learn it. And may we bring that stuff out into the world and not leave it here. And may it transform us and may it help us transform others. And it's in your name that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So, we're on week 3 of Ezekiel. And I guess we don't really need to spend too much time recapping. We're already kind of having a late start. But
we got those a few slides of recap and everything. So.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So we got through chapter 8.
Also, if you're wanting to read from your Bible, I can do the clicking if you don't want to be.
That works.
I went down the wrong pipe.
I think it's easier if I just focus on
yeah,
the circle.
No, that's fine.
Honestly, does anyone want to kick off recapping a bit? We can kind of just bounce off each other a little bit.
So won't dwell too much on, the whole thread of it all, but in chapter 4, God basically gives Ezekiel a list of sort of tribulations that he's going to be going through that is sort of representative of the conditions that the Jews will face during the siege of Jerusalem, which is to come.
Mm-hmm.
And at times it can seem very performative. He's having him lay on his side in public, he's having him make unclean bread in public, but it really serves to show that, Ezekiel's willing to go through a lot to get the people of Judah to understand what's about to come, and they just don't listen to him. It's very frustrating at times to see the people's reaction. As we'll get to in chapter 8, the things that they're doing in the temple is absolutely abhorrent. So you really understand the corruption that the society has gone under. And in chapter 5, God gives Ezekiel another thing to do, where he basically sets up a model city of Jerusalem representing the siege and showing what it'll be like to the people, and everyone again just kind of brushes it off and ignores it. And that's, I think, when God gets is most angry, and he's like, okay, listen, I am going to depart from the temple, but before I do, I'm going to make sure all this idolatrous, all your worthless silver and gold is thrown into the streets for plunder. You'll have no worth in it anymore. He says he's going to smash the altars and destroy all the high places and things of that nature. And he really gets vocal and forceful with his message, where he's like, this is what I'm going to do, this is why I have to do this. This is the only way back to salvation for you guys, pretty much.
Yeah, so I think the main image that we're supposed to carry with us throughout the whole book of Ezekiel is that God specifically describes him as a watchman for the people of Judah. And the main job a watchman has is to make the severity of the threat known to the people, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're thinking of a watchman on a wall, his only job is to look for what's coming and then communicate it to the people in a manner that adequately prepares them for what's coming, so that they are best equipped to actually respond appropriately.
Yeah. And
I think that kind of explains why Ezekiel is kind of different than the other prophets, because he's not simply functioning in this communication, like his job is specifically tied to making them absolutely know what's about to go on. And so, what's up?
I said he's not just acting as a mediator between God and the people. He's more so acting as a living sign.
Well, he's a living warning sign.
Yeah.
And it's almost like every single different thing that God's causing him to do is a different way that he's warning the people, just to make it absolutely clear, right? He's not simply speaking, he's doing things. It's like he's putting out yellow tape and he's marking everything off, and then he's putting stop signs, and then he's putting red lights, and like he's doing everything possible so that they should know, do not cross this line. And where we're at in the book is so we got to chapter 8 last week, and we're kind of coming near the end of this first section in Ezekiel, which chapters 1 through 11 directly correspond to chapters 40 to 48, to where chapters 1 through 11 is setting up this huge moment where God departs the temple. And it's going to set up the end of the book where God returns to a restored temple. But I think we're just getting to see all these crazy antics that he's going about in these early chapters, because God leaving the temple is not a small thing, right? Especially whenever you're thinking of the grand story of Scripture, right? The whole goal of Scripture is that God wants to dwell with man again. And the whole reason God chose the people of Israel is that he's going to accomplish that through them. And, Genesis starts off with, the Garden of Eden. And Exodus culminates with God dwelling in the tabernacle. And the high moment of the entire kingdom of Israel is whenever Solomon is preaching this, praying this amazing prayer, and God comes to dwell in the temple. And, the thing that makes Israel and Judah separate is that God dwells with them. And without God's presence, they are nothing. And God pointed out through other prophets that if you're just looking at their actions, they're worse than the other people at this point in the story. And so quite literally the only thing that makes them special is that God dwells with them and not with others. Yet all of a sudden, God is packing up and leaving. But then the twist that we saw in chapter 1 is that where God is heading is he's actually heading with them to exile in Babylon.
Yeah.
But the only reason he would have to do that is if his house is not going to be there much longer, right? And so it is a thing where he's not abandoning them entirely, but it kind of looks that way because he's leaving, but that's because they're going to be leaving soon. And so he's going ahead of them to prepare a way. And we actually kind of saw that with Daniel and his friends, where God is with them in Babylon, preparing a way for them and stuff. And so that's kind of where we're at in the story, and that kind of explains the different things that Ezekiel's been called to do here. And then, like Nick pointed out, in chapter 8, all of a sudden, Ezekiel's vision is on the temple itself. Ezekiel's over in Babylon, but he has a vision of the temple. And things are looking bad, to where you have this recurring thing where Ezekiel sees one thing, and God says, if you think that's bad, wait for what's next. And then it just keeps getting worse, to where he sees, there were 4 different things that he saw. The first one was
So he saw.
I think it was in was it in the courtyard? I think he saw the image of jealousy, I believe it was. So it's an idolatrous statue. And then the second thing is that there was a hole in the wall, and God tells him to dig through the hole. And in the side chambers of the temple, there are elders and priests who are just engaging in pagan idolatrous practices. And it's oh, that's pretty bad. And then the third thing was
the weeping for Tammuz.
Oh, the women weeping for Tammuz. And then the fourth one is that you've got these, I guess presumably these are priests in the inner courtyard, and this is as close as you could possibly get to the presence of God, right? In all the world, this is as close as you could get. Without going into the building itself. Yet they're not facing towards the presence of God. They're turning the opposite direction and bowing down towards the sun. And it's the perfect image of how corrupt things have become, to where they are so they're so close to Eden, yet they are facing the opposite direction. It's it's crazy. It's being directly next door to the tree of life, yet facing towards the land of Nod. It's just what are you doing? This is ridiculous. And so that kind of just seals the idea of Ezekiel saying things are bad. Because keep in mind, he's been in Babylon this whole time. He's been preaching about destruction, but he hasn't seen how bad it's gotten.
Yeah.
And now Ezekiel sees, he's oh, this is why destruction needs to happen. And that's going to kind of set up where we're at, starting in chapter 9. So.
Yeah, I say so.
Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to add before we just hop in?
It doesn't even necessarily limit the part in chapter 8 that really sticks out to me is that Ezekiel recognizes one of the priests, and it's presumably one of the elders who was still in like Jerusalem at the time. So it's even like the top of the top are in, like they're practicing this idolatrous stuff as well.
Yeah, because Ezekiel he is a priest, so he'd probably recognize at least some of these people for sure.
Well, it'd also be heartbreaking because if you're going with the timeline, if Ezekiel is 30 years old and he's been in Babylon for a few years now, presumably he was like in his teens or early 20s whenever he was like in Jerusalem last. And so if he's familiar with this priest, it would presumably be because they either grew up together and they're like contemporaries, or that this guy was a priest who was like, almost like maybe like even like a tutor or a leader to him. And the fact that it's like, it says it's the 70 elders of the house of Israel with Jezaniah. I guess it doesn't say that Jezaniah is standing in like a leadership role. And so it could just be that he's amongst them. But he does draw attention to that, to where it's like he knows this guy. And whether it was his friend, whether it was like his tutor, who can say? But he looks and this is somebody he knows and he's participating in this. And again, it's just, they're doing it off to the side, as if being in a side chamber hid it from God.
Yeah.
To where God's like, hey, you see that tiny wall? Just like, I know that you can't see what's going on inside there, so just dig through the wall a little bit more so you can see. Because God can see it no matter what. And,
yeah. And again, notice the emphasis on like the whole seeing thing. As we're gonna read in here, where the people seem to think that because God, like, they seem to think that God doesn't see what's going on.
Yeah.
And the whole point of this whole vision is that they're seeing exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
Exactly. They think they always behind the inner chamber and no one's gonna see us.
Yeah. Well, I guess this is where it's kind of, with Ezekiel here, you kind of get insight to what it's like to be a prophet, because since Ezekiel is in Babylon, he did not see what's going on in Jerusalem at all, but God did, and so God is giving him insight to that.
Yeah.
Right? And so we have to kind of just apply that in every realm of our lives as well, to where there are a lot of things that we are simply not aware of, but God is. And if he wanted to, he could make that known to us. And he could expose our very hearts if he wanted to. And the scarier thing is that he might not even expose our hearts to ourselves. He could expose it to somebody else. Right now, he is exposing the heart of Jezaniah, son of Shaphan, to Ezekiel. And Jezaniah doesn't even know. And so it just kind of gives you insight to what it's like to be God. Because to him, like, this is shocking to Ezekiel, but it's not shocking to God. Because God sees it all. Like, he has seen step by step how it turned to this. Whereas,
it's true.
Oftentimes we are just blind to that. And I don't know. It's a cool contrast between human, like limited understanding versus God's omniscience. He just knows.
Yeah. So that's true. Okay, we can go ahead and probably hop on in. I think I'm just going to go ahead and read through 9, and then we'll talk. So we just read how he's showing God's showing Ezekiel all of the different abominations they're doing, and he says, like, do you see this? And so in response, then he cried out in my hearing with a loud voice, saying, draw near, O executioners of the city, each with his destroying weapon in his hand. And behold, 6 men were coming from the direction of the upper gate, which faces north, each with his shattering weapon in his hand. And among them was a certain man, clothed in linen, with a scribe's case at his loins. And they went in and stood beside the bronze altar. Then the glory of the God of Israel went up, from the cherub on which it had been, to the threshold of the house of Yahweh. And he called to the man clothed in linen, at whose loins was the scribe's case. Yahweh said to him, go through the midst of the city, even through the midst of Jerusalem, and put a mark on the foreheads of the men who sigh and groan over all the abominations which are being done in its midst. But to the others, he said in my hearing, go through the city after him and strike. Do not let your eye have pity, and do not spare. Kill to utter destruction old men, chosen men, virgins, little ones, and women, but do not touch any man on whom is the mark. And you shall start from my sanctuary. So they started with elders who were before the house. And he said to them, defile the house and fill the courts with the slain. Go out. Thus they went out and struck down the people in the city. Now it happened as they were striking the people, and I alone remained, that I fell on my face and cried out, and said, Alas, Lord Yahweh, are you destroying the whole remnant of Israel by pouring out your wrath on Jerusalem? Then he said to me, The iniquity of the house of Israel and Judah is very, very great, and the land is filled with bloodshed, and the city is full of perversion. For they say, Yahweh has forsaken the land, and Yahweh does not see. But as for me, my eye will have no pity, nor will I spare, but I will put their way upon their heads. Then behold, the man clothed in linen, at whose loins was the scribe's case, responded with a word, saying, I have done just as you have commanded me.
It's not long, but there's a lot going on here. So it seems like this is very similar. It's almost the opposite of what's going on in Revelation, right? Except in Revelation, where they receive the mark of the beast, and then the people who receive the mark of the beast are going to die and receive judgment. However, here you have essentially the angels
Almost like a mark of the faith.
give them like a mark of the faith, and then killing everyone else.
So you actually have that same exact thing in Revelation. People just never remember that part because the mark of the beast thing is so much more sensationalized and conspiratorial. But in Revelation, you have both the mark of the beast and the mark of the faithful, to where the followers of the beast and the followers of Christ both have marks on their forehead and stuff. But people don't talk about the mark of the faithful one because it doesn't lend itself to as much conspiracies because there's not a number attached to it. Whereas 666, so. But yes.
Revelation 7, I don't want to go too much into Revelation, but it's probably worth mentioning because of the fact that people do that for Revelation.
Yeah.
It's worth mentioning that it's probably calling back to this.
Yeah.
But in Revelation 7, that's when the angels say, hey, let's not release the seventh seal until the God's people have been marked on their foreheads specifically. And that's when it mentions the 144,000 that are sealed. And then they open the seventh seal, and that's when destruction goes out.
Which is interesting because that would suggest that the seal is specifically tied not to just anybody who believes, but specifically to Jewish people, which that's just it. It's an intriguing correlation to this because this is specifically tied to Jewish people living in Jerusalem at this time period who are grieved by the apostasy going on, and so that is an interesting correlation to where we probably don't need to spend long on it, but. I would say that it is calling back to this.
Yeah.
But,
like we talked about how a lot of the stuff in Revelation, it's all back in the Old Testament. So big picture here, what actually happens in the story? And maybe just a couple sentences, because the actual story itself is pretty straightforward.
Yeah. So God is angry about all the abominations that are going on in the temple. So he wants to identify the people who are maybe not as angry as him, because I don't think you could be as angry as God in this moment for what's going on in the temple. But the people in Jerusalem who are upset with all the abominations and all the idolatrous activity and stuff, and he wants to spare them basically to be the remnant of Jerusalem going forward. And then he tells the executioners that anyone who doesn't have the mark on their forehead should be killed. And I don't know if the implication is that everyone gets killed based on what Ezekiel says, because it says in verse 8 or so?
About 6, where it says killed to utter destruction?
Well, no, it's not the kill to utter destruction. It's actually verse 8, where it says, Now it happened as they were striking the people, and I alone remained, that I fell on my face and cried out and said, Alas, Lord Yahweh, are you destroying the whole remnant of Israel by pouring out your wrath on Jerusalem?
Yeah.
Where it's basically in the vision, there's no one who has the mark on their forehead.
I think that's talking about whenever the people that he sends go out. So
okay.
So in the immediate, where Ezekiel is standing, there's all these people that came to God, and God said, go do this. Gotcha. They all go out, and now it's just him and God. He's like, God, are you going to kill everybody?
Yeah. Which, that being said, I think that the language here directly calls back to a story in Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you, was that?
Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yes, with Sodom and Gomorrah, because here you have 6 men being sent into a city, whereas in Sodom and Gomorrah you have 2 men being sent into a city. And the whole thing is to spare the righteous, right? So you have the 2 men going into the city, and they're warning Lot and his family to bring them out. And meanwhile, back outside the city, you've got God and Abraham having this speech, like this conversation. And Abraham's whole question is, will you wipe out the righteous with the wicked? And now you have Ezekiel saying, Lord, are you destroying the whole remnant of Israel? He's like, are you going to wipe out everybody? And so you do have this intentional callback to where Ezekiel is not merely the watchman, he's also the intercessor, he's doing what Abraham did, which is just kind of a cool callback to where whenever you're reading it, you can't help but remember that story, which is neat.
Yeah, that is true. Especially considering some of the imagery later on we're going to read.
It's even pretty strong language to say, it's fine, defile the temple, and he just tells them to kill the people, because normally you wouldn't kill people, and if you're holding executions or stones, you wouldn't do it in the temple.
Yeah.
And God's just fine, do it, whatever.
But he's basically reached the point where he's like, well, I'm going to, my presence is going to leave the temple, which we'll get to in chapter 11, obviously, like we've talked about. But he's like, the ground has already been defiled by the abominations that have been committed there. It needs to be cleansed with the blood of the people, pretty much.
Well, and it's not usually a good sign whenever the holy people of God are being compared to Sodom and Gomorrah. And this isn't the first time we saw this, right? So this has been a long time coming, because as early as the book of Judges, there was a story directly calling back to Sodom and Gomorrah, right? The situation at Gibeah, that took place before Saul was even king, and that was directly calling back to Sodom and Gomorrah. But the difference is that we're not just dealing with a city on the outskirts of Jerusalem, because Jerusalem wasn't even a big deal at the time, and there wasn't a kingdom, and the whole point of the Judges is that everybody's doing what's right in their own eyes. Having a king was supposed to resolve that, but it isn't. And so now you've got the holy city where God dwells being as bad as Sodom and Gomorrah. Whereas, Sodom was destroyed and they had no Bible. What is Jerusalem's excuse? They have God's presence dwelling in the center of the city, and they're just as bad. Yeah. And so it isn't and the whole thing that started God's conversation with Abraham is that the outcry has become great from Sodom. Yeah. And so now he's saying okay, well, let's mark the people who are crying out because of the abomination. So it's not everybody's bad, but there might be 5 righteous, but the city's gonna be destroyed anyways. So
yeah, for sure. Let's see what else.
What's the deal with the man clothed in linen with the scribe case?
Yeah.
What
do y'all think?
What's the name? I don't know.
I don't know. Watching The Chosen, it just sounds like they're describing Matthew. Is this a pre-incarnate Matthew? No.
So, what do y'all typically associate with when you hear a linen robe?
Usually either a priest or an angel. Or an Egyptian, but that's more just
I doubt this is an Egyptian.
Yeah, just some random Egyptian dude strolling through Jerusalem. What's going on here? Y'all are worshiping our gods. So I would typically think of a priest or an angel.
Yeah. This might be kind of early to mention it, because I think really it's going to be chapter 11, where it's going to be more of a thing. But later on, we're going to read how the same guy is also going to grab, so they're by the bronze altar right now, and they're also there's this whole basically God's chariot of fire, and he's going to eventually tell this guy to get coals and spread them across the city. And it seems to me, this is also calling back to Leviticus, where you have the Day of Atonement, where the Levitical priest would actually get coals from this censer on the altar, and it would he would scatter I forget exactly how it works, but basically he makes a sacrifice, but there's also this like incense and coals involved in this like atonement, to where
But this time the people are the sacrifice.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, because he strikes the people down, and then there's the coals being taken and scattered. And so I think, yeah, whenever I read this, I think of like a priest, maybe even like a high priest specifically. What else do y'all think?
It's basically like these guys are God's chosen priests and the people's, like we said, the whole city of Jerusalem is the altar, and the temple itself, or the altar. The people are the sacrifice, and their blood is basically being like spread around.
And like I said, this is kind of getting ahead of myself, but when you get to the coal thing, the specific word that he says is to sprinkle the coals, which is the exact same imagery of sprinkling blood for like atonement. So really all of this kind of calls back, like, it also, to me, kind of calls back to like even the Passover, to where the same thing, that you have like the blood being sprinkled before the destroyer comes and passes over the doors, to where it's not the exact same, but there is still this idea of like, God placing this divine protection on certain people, and this destroyer figure passes through the town and strikes down the wicked.
So when it says that they're being marked, what verse is that?
That is
Verse 4?
yeah. The mark on the
put a
foreheads.
mark on the foreheads. It doesn't specify what the mark is, right?
No, I don't think
But
so.
are we supposed to assume that it's like with the imagery? I would assume it's like almost like a mark of blood, or something, right?
It could be.
That's I'm thinking of like the lint, like where they put like the ashes.
I have to look at it.
I'm just wondering because I don't think like in Revelation it doesn't specify either. I'm just wondering if the imagery, since it's not explained, I'm wondering if it's supposed to call back to like Leviticus, where like the priests were, that they'd have blood that was put, I believe it's on their ears, their thumb, and then like their big toe or something like that, to where, people. I don't know if this is actually what it's going for. Whenever we get to Leviticus and study it for the podcast, I'll hopefully have a better answer. But I know that some people almost treated that as like the first occurrence of almost like the hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil. Like it's talking about like they would mark the ears so that nothing unholy would come into their ears, and then like they would do nothing unholy with their hands, and they would walk nowhere unholy with their feet. I don't know if that's
like
what's...
a Jewish tradition.
That's just how I've heard it preached. I don't know if it's like I haven't looked. That's what I'm saying. I haven't looked deeply enough into it.
So the word mark, it only really pops up here and then some other point in Samuel, where it says like it means like confession, but in general it means like a scribble or like to like set a mark. And I think when I looked into this, like I think the assumption people made was it was like almost like an ink mark, but I think that's because of the
scribe's case.
The word for the scribe's case is like it's often translated as like an inkling case.
That would make sense.
But that word also only appears in this chapter. 3 times in this chapter, that's the only time that word appears, and some people think it's like a loaner from Egyptian. I didn't look past that, but but as a side note, the Septuagint, where the word says like the scribe's case, they actually use the word like sapphire, so it's like a girdle of sapphire. So
That almost makes him sound like the guy from Daniel.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Because he also was clothed in linen. Which is, it's possible, but yeah. So I think that like the mark being like in ink, that's an assumption based on like that word specifically. But
could you imagine if it was like just a gemstone smacked in your forehead?
That'd be wild. Pinky, stay away from my teeth.
There's like, well, you're not gonna miss this.
at the most, I would say like the sapphire to me it'd make me associate him as more of like almost like a theophany figure.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't know if that's the intention here, if he's supposed to be like a theophany or if it's just like he just is a different role than the other guys.
That'd be really cool, especially since God talks to him.
Yeah.
It's like you have God talking to God.
Yeah, and then the spirit's also like a separate thing too.
Yeah. Whoa, crazy.
But yeah. Okay, so what else here?
That wasn't quite 2 sentences.
That was close enough on a cosmic scale.
Yeah.
It rounds down.
Yeah.
Another thing I guess I didn't technically mention, I don't know if it's actually that important, but it does make a note of it as we read throughout these chapters, but like the progression of like God's glory moving. So like
Oh yes.
how it says that the glory of God of Israel went up from the cherub, which it had been to the threshold of the house of Yahweh. I'm assuming that means that it like goes down from this chariot and like goes to like the doorway.
So I'm thinking when it says the cherub, I'm assuming
It's the cherub on the ark.
I'm assuming that would be a reference to the cherub on the ark. The thing is, we don't have an explicit reference to the Ark of the Covenant after what, 1 Kings, I think it is. The last
I see.
the Ark of the Covenant is specifically mentioned in the Bible is in 1 Kings. I'm pretty sure whenever like Solomon puts it in there, but like whenever we think of God's presence dwelling in the ark, we almost think of it being like in the box itself, whereas Scripture it seems to consistently describe it as it resting upon the ark. So it's like it's specifically him dwelling between the cherubim on the ark.
Yeah.
And so I'm guessing that's what this is a reference to. And so it could be like just a understated reference to the ark.
Yeah, I thought it was referring because like whenever in chapter 8 he gets there,
Mhm.
it says, "And behold, the glory of the God of Israel was there, like the appearance which I saw on the plain."
Yeah.
And it does later on. It talks about like how the chariot thing that we saw in chapter 1
Yeah.
is currently here. So
Yes.
like there's the wheels and the cherubim,
Yeah.
and like there's the furnace in the middle, and there's a throne.
Yeah.
And so I guess I assume like because that it mentions the glory of God being there.
Yeah.
So I assumed that it was like, but I was trying to figure out like how that would work because it seems like that would be going into the temple and then,
Yeah.
like, then back out.
Yeah, that's where it gets confusing because, like, we talked about this in chapter 1. Whenever the glory of God shows up to him in Babylon, it basically is supposed to represent a portable temple.
Yeah.
But now he is seeing it again while in the temple.
Mhm.
And so the question becomes, where is God at? And I think that what we're supposed to probably understand is almost like,
God's
because well, keep in mind that throughout this whole thing, Ezekiel is walking throughout the temple, and God is continuously talking to him.
Yeah.
And so I'm assuming that it's probably like God is almost just dwelling where he normally dwells, you know? And so he's seeing the same thing. So he might even be having the same like cosmic visionary experience, but now God is dwelling in the place where he normally is at.
Like
And
us in the ark.
Yeah, so I think that he's probably in the temple, and then now it says he's moving to the threshold, because what we're going to see is that like over the course of these chapters, there's a continuous like eastward movement to where it's almost like God is like I think I mentioned this last week, but it almost reminds me of David whenever David is leaving Jerusalem fleeing from Absalom.
Oh,
It's almost
yeah.
like God is weeping as he leaves. Like it's like he is going into a state of lamentation to where he doesn't just leave quickly. It's not like he just like books it. He just slowly but surely makes his way out. So where he goes from between the cherubim to the threshold and works his way out. That's kind of how I read it. But
That makes sense. Like David he technically wasn't exiled, but he chose to flee like himself.
it was like a self-imposed exile.
self-imposed thing.
And it kind of works because it was for the sake of the people.
Yeah.
He didn't want Jerusalem to be destroyed, and so he left. And ironically, God is leaving because Jerusalem's going to be destroyed, but it's because he doesn't want the true Jerusalem, which is the people, to be destroyed. You know, and so
Yeah. That would make sense.
yeah.
Yeah, because he's doing like a self-imposed exile. God is.
And we probably don't need to linger on it, but I imagine that verse 6 is probably a matter of controversy to a lot of people. Just because of how strong the language is. Kill to utter destruction old men, chosen men, virgins, little ones, and women. But do not touch any man on whom is the mark. That's just it's always good to just be able to spot verses that are going to make people nervous. And
God is so mean.
yeah, and I don't want to make light of those accusations. I just think that people just need to remember who God is. Like, he's the author of everything.
Yeah.
He can command what he commands. And that's just how it is. Like, it doesn't mean you have to be comfortable with it. I just think that we're in a very weird position whenever we think that... But whenever we start accusing God of immorality, it's just not a good position. And like, that's why I don't even like doing that with other religions. Like to me, whenever I examine Islam, there's a lot I disagree with about like the moral system of Islam. But that's not usually what I'm going to critique, because if Islam is true, whether I like it or not, what God says is what God says. You know what I mean? And so given the claims of the like if there is a God who made all things, what he says goes. And so I just think that's probably the easiest answer to that. I think there are human answers you could give to verse 6 to explain it away and stuff, but I just usually don't waste my time. Like, people just like stammer through like a 20-minute long response, and it's easier to just say, God is God. Am I in the place of God? No. So.
Yeah, I guess if I had to give a simple answer, I would also just probably add verse 10 seems to kind of help answer that, to where you have to remember that God isn't just deciding to kill random people. This is like the whole thing, this whole process is very like carried out methodically, to where he's making sure that, like we mentioned earlier, the innocent people aren't dying. So the people that are dying are the people that he is simply basically reflecting back their evil back on them.
Yeah.
More so than just like him deciding he wants to kill people.
Yeah. Well, and also, Ezekiel doesn't make light of it. It's not like Ezekiel's like, all right, this is awesome. Ezekiel's like, God, are you going to wipe out everybody? Like, Ezekiel is troubled by the command. And so that's why I have little patience whenever people are like, oh, I can't believe God would do this. It's like, congrats, that's the point of the story. Like, they're like, I can't believe God would wipe out all of humanity with the flood. It's like, yeah, that's the point. Like, the point of the story is that that's a very extreme thing to do. It's not like God just like does this haphazardly. The whole point is that they have driven him to this.
I mean, God grieved over it.
Yeah, and so that's why people are just being very disingenuous, I think, where they're not reading the message of the story. But
yeah. What else here?
One thing I just want to highlight is that the phrase "my eye will have no pity." That's a phrase that I've been just looking at that really shows up a lot in Torah, specifically in Deuteronomy. I noticed this because it only showed up once in Genesis. And it was specifically whenever Joseph was commanding his family to move to Egypt, and he said, have no pity, let your eye not have any pity on like the goods of your family's house. Like, he basically says, don't worry about it, I will provide. Mm-hmm. Whereas in Deuteronomy, it consistently is used in regards to like the blessings and curses of the Torah, and God is saying like, don't let anything stop you from being absolutely righteous and just. Mm-hmm. To where if somebody does this bad thing, don't let your eye have pity on them, and you justify what they do, and you don't give them the consequence they deserve. To where it's actually almost like so many of the there's this sense of like mercy and graciousness and compassion that is built into the commands of Torah.
Yeah.
To where it can easily be abused in the opposite direction. To where God actually has to command, don't have pity. And I think we even see this nowadays with like the commands of Jesus, like to where Jesus is all about loving people and forgiving people and being gracious to people. And you see many people in culture exploiting that to where they're basically making it sound like Jesus has no standards. And that you're just supposed to like endorse all sorts of evil for the sake of loving others. And it's like, well, no, let your eye not have pity. Like there's a line to draw. But you should have a disposition of grace. And so I just, that phrase shows up a lot. And I mean, this verse, like this chapter is only 11 verses long, but that phrase is repeated like 4 or 5 times. I will not have pity. I will not have pity.
It's true.
So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I think that it was also like a phrase in like Joshua and stuff too, when he would tell them like go in and like and wipe out like the Amalekites and stuff.
Yep.
But yeah. Okay. Anything else you have to say about chapter 9 before we move on? No. Okay. Go ahead and hop into chapter 10. Let's see. I can go ahead and read through the whole thing. A lot of it is going to be easy to go over. So the guy in linen just came back to God and said, "I have done as you commanded me."
Okay, now I'm looking at verse 1, and it's making me think of the vision from chapter 1 again, because it's talking about the expand. Okay, sorry. Anyways, we'll get to that after you read it.
Then I looked, and behold, in the expanse that was over the heads of the cherubim, something like a sapphire stone, in appearance and the likeness of a throne, appeared above them. And he spoke to the man clothed in linen and said, "Enter between the whirling wheels under the cherubim, and fill your hands with coals of fire from between the cherubim, and scatter them over the city." And he entered in my sight. Now the cherubim were standing on the right side of the house when the man entered, and the cloud filled the inner courts. Then the glory of Yahweh rose up from the cherub to the threshold of the house, and the house was filled with the cloud, and the court was filled with the brightness of the glory of Yahweh. Moreover, the sound of the wings of the cherubim were heard as far as the outer court, like the voice of God Almighty when he speaks. Now it happened that when he commanded the man clothed in linen, saying, "Take fire from between the whirling wheels, from between the cherubim," he entered and stood beside a wheel. Then the cherub sent forth his hand from between the cherubim to the fire which was between the cherubim, took some up, and put it into the hands of the one clothed in linen, who took it and went out. And the cherubim appeared to have the form of a man's hand under their wings. Then I looked, and behold, 4 wheels beside the cherubim, 1 wheel beside each cherub, and the appearance of the wheels was like the gleam of a Tarshish stone. As for their appearance, all 4 of them had the same likeness, as if one wheel were within another wheel. As they went in any of their 4 directions without turning as they went, but they went in the direction which they faced, without turning as they went. And their whole body, their backs, their hands, their wings, and the wheels were full of eyes all around, the wheels belonging to all 4 of them. The wheels were called in my hearing the whirling wheels, and each one had 4 faces. The first face was the face of a cherub, the second face was the face of a man, the third the face of a lion, and the fourth the face of an eagle. Then the cherubim rose up. They are the living creatures that I saw by the river Kebar. Now as the cherubim went, the wheels went beside them. Also when the cherubim lifted up their wings to rise from the ground, the wheels would not turn from beside them. When the cherubim stood still, the wheels would stand still. And when they rose up, the wheels would rise with them, for the spirit of the living creatures was in them. Then the glory of Yahweh departed from the threshold of the house and stood over the cherubim. When the cherubim departed, they lifted their wings and rose up from the earth in my sight, with the wheels beside them. And they stood still at the entrance of the east gate of the house of Yahweh, and the glory of the God of Israel hovered over them. These are the living creatures that I saw beneath the God of Israel by the river Kebar, so I knew that they were cherubim. Each one had 4 faces, and each one had 4 wings, and beneath their wings was the likeness of human hands. As for the likeness of their faces, they were the same faces whose appearance I had seen by the river Kebar. Each one went straight ahead.
You think this is calling back to chapter 1?
Well, yeah, but like, I'm just still trying to figure out the placement of it because it's just weird to me because, like, I guess verse 3 is the thing I think that clarifies it. Because it says, now the cherubim were standing on the right side of the house when the man entered. And so the cherubim are they're outside, like, so the house is the temple.
Yeah.
They're standing on the right side of the house. But then it says the man enters into the temple, right? Is that what it's talking about there?
That's what it seems.
And it says the cloud filled the inner court. And the cloud would be the presence of God.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, well, he says enter between the whirling wheels under the cherubim and fill your hands with coals of fire. But then it says that the cherubim get the coals and get it to him.
Yeah. But I'm confused because it says the cloud filled the inner court. Wait, I guess it's not the, yeah, that'd be just outside the house, I guess. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just the placement of it is weird because if you're tracking with it, they're directly next to the temple itself, which is where the temple, like that's where God's presence would dwell. So I guess we're almost supposed to read it that like when Ezekiel arrived, God had already left. Like he'd already left the Holy of Holies, and it's almost like it's almost even sadder to where Ezekiel isn't there to see him leave the Holy of Holies. It's like God's already just waiting outside the house. Like,
yeah,
it's almost like God has already like by the time Ezekiel arrives, God has already packed his bags and he's all loaded up and he's ready to leave.
Yeah.
To where it's not him like, hey, let me pack up.
Like his
it's
bags
like
are in the car. He's in the driving away. You know, waiting. He just like arrives and he's like, okay, see you.
Yeah, and that's just it's even more heartbreaking because it's like it's almost like God, like it kind of almost changes the emotion of what Ezekiel is seeing here because it's not like Ezekiel is seeing this climactic moment when God leaves the temple. It's like no, he already left. He's just waiting there, and he wants Ezekiel to like watch him, like make the rest of the journey. It's like that's that's just, it's different than how I read it in the past. But I mean, it's been years since I've been in Ezekiel. But like,
Yeah.
that's just interesting. To where we actually never see him, I guess, leave the Holy of Holies, unless it was in the previous chapter, to where like because it says he went to the threshold. But that's where I'm confused. Like, is that I'm probably like obsessing over this too much because it says he's standing to the right of the house, but in chapter 9 it said he moved to the threshold.
Yeah, the glory of the God of Israel went up from the cherub on which it had been, so cherub singular, to the threshold of the house of Yahweh.
So I think.
So wouldn't that be leaving the Holy of Holies to
Yes.
the door,
Yeah, that makes sense.
and then now he's on the right side?
Yeah.
Okay. That's how I was interpreting it the first time.
The right side is something that faces east.
Yes.
So Ezekiel is there to see this whole thing.
Yeah.
Then, I guess.
But,
What-
but then here in verse 4 it says, the glory of Yahweh rose up from the cherub to the threshold of the house. So is that repeating it over?
I don't know. That's why I was confused because whenever you were reading it, I was like, wait, because it already said he was at the threshold of the house. I think I'm just like, in my head, I'm trying to picture it, but like, one thing that probably complicates even more is that there's the building where there would be a threshold, and then there's the inner court where there would be another threshold between the inner court and the outer court, and like.
Oh, I see.
So it could be using threshold of the house in two different ways. To where maybe in chapter 9, it was him leaving the building itself. And then now he's there. And then he progresses on through the inner court. I don't know.
I think.
But then verse 4 says, and the house was filled with a cloud. And so I don't know.
Yeah. Is the cloud supposed to be a different thing? Because it says the court was filled. It says the house was filled with the cloud, and the court was filled with the brightness of
So
the glory of Yahweh.
chapter 10 starts off with him saying that he saw. This is tripping us all up. He saw the appearance of basically what he saw on the river Kabar, like
Yeah.
with the sapphire and the throne
Yes.
that was above.
The cloud.
That's
the
the
cloud.
biggest thing I'm getting
Well,
is
the issue, there's a storm cloud. That stuff was above the storm cloud. And it's like,
But
like-
now that part is above the heads of the cherubim that are in the temple, so it's like, I don't know, man.
and I guess we're getting like I guess an indirect reference to the ark of the covenant, to the ark, because we're referencing the cherubim and God's presence in
yes.
between them, right? So we would assume the ark of the covenant is still
Yeah.
there.
Okay, here's what I'm thinking. I think that this might be resolved. Sorry, Orly or Rachel, I'm so sorry, Sean.
No, you're good.
Like, you probably have certain things you want to talk about, and I'm just like, the logistics of it are tripping me up. I'm thinking that we're supposed to distinguish, I think we're supposed to distinguish the glory of God and the cloud, right? To where, like Daniel chapter 7, right? The Son of Man is the one who rides the clouds.
Yeah.
So we often kind of associate, like whenever we read in the past of God arriving, it says he arrives in the clouds, and so I think we almost tend to equate the cloud to God. But the whole thing is that he's always in the cloud, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the cloud is his vehicle, and he's the one on top of it, right? And so in verse 3 of chapter 9, it says, the glory of the God of Israel went up from the cherub on which it had been to the threshold of the house.
Mhm.
So that's the glory of God. When you go to chapter 10, now it says, the verse 4, the glory of Yahweh rose up from the cherub to the threshold of the house, and the house was filled with the cloud. So like it seems like it's describing the same event, and like the cloud is like going behind him almost,
Mhm.
I guess, or I don't know, or no, but the court is filled with it. So it's like it's going in front of him. I don't know. I thought that was going to resolve things. It'd be a lot easier if it said the cloud rose up from the thing, but
Yeah, it's hard because it seems like they're different things, but I assume the cloud was a part of his like vehicle.
No,
Yeah.
I kind of read it and I saw similarities in language. I'm like, this is the same thing he saw on the river.
well,
It represents God present.
no matter what, it's the same thing. We're just trying to figure out the movement of it because it's like
Yeah.
the way that chapter 9 describes in chapter 10. It's like they're almost like repeating the same thing.
Yeah.
I'll look it up. Anyways, you talk about stuff you want to talk about, and
You're good. Well, is there anything else y'all have that stands out to y'all in this chapter before I talk?
We have the appearance of the whirling wheels, which, no matter how many times I read this, I cannot visualize that in my head. I've seen people like depict it, but something about it, like just the.
Yeah. At one point, I was like considering that maybe the eyes were like pomegranates designs, but I don't know if that's the intention either.
Yeah, I was trying to figure that because people always depict it as like actual physical eyes, and I feel like that can't be what he means. I mean,
Yeah.
people usually like they talk about it being like the all-seeing eye of God, but it doesn't seem like these wheels are supposed to represent God Himself. And so
Yeah.
when it says filled with eyes, I'm assuming it means something different. But
Yeah. I kind of assume.
Didn't we see that we saw the? Well, never mind.
Yeah, whenever we read it in chapter 1, the way that I kind of interpreted it was that it's referring to the fact that, like, because it makes a big mention about how these wheels and these cherubim, they kind of move as one, and it's like they don't really, like, turn and move, it's like they just kind of, like, go off in the direction that they
yes,
go. So I assume that when it says that there's eyes all around, the idea is, like, it's like as if it can see all around, it doesn't have to, like as a person, I have to like turn to see and go that direction. Whereas like, if I just like started moving backwards and without turning, and went like you think I have eyes on the back of my head.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the imagery is that like, it's like as if they have eyes all around because they just kind of.
So it might not literally be populated with eyes. It's like it's moving as if it had eyes all around.
Exactly.
I think that's the intention. It's like a metaphor.
That makes sense. It's like God can move anywhere without having to change its direction or turn its head.
So it seems
Cause
like
He's all knowing, and he's all knowing, and he can see everything without needing to make adjustments.
Yeah, well, just because it's repeated so often. How it says like, as the cherubim went, the wheels went, and when the cherubim lifted up their wings, the wheels would not turn from beside them. When they stood still, the wheels stood still. When they rose up, the wheels would rise. And it mentions a lot how like they don't turn as they go; they just go in that direction.
not to dwell too much on the cloud and the glory thing, but I was reading through someone's commentary on it, and it seems like the cloud and the glory of Yahweh are, they're sort of split, but they're the same. Like they're both manifestations of God's glory, and they're both like dwelling in the temple and moving to leave.
Yeah. Well, it's the cloud is the vehicle and he's the person. Like to where I mean, Jewish people they call this glory the Shekinah glory of God.
Yeah.
And there's some people who go really weird places with that. But
yeah,
looking into it, it seems like how people interpret this is that what we read in chapter 9 and chapter 10 are just repeating the same thing. So it's like if you go to chapter 9, it says that this movement took place. And then this results in this entire discussion, to where it might almost distract you from like the movement.
So it's bringing you back.
And so it's bringing you back, and then he repeats it. So like that's why it's probably confusing. And so they're interpreting it as he's in the Holy of Holies, and he's moving his way to the doorway.
That makes
And
sense.
so that's why the cloud is now in the courtyard because he's moving outwards. That takes away the thing I was saying earlier about him just already being packed and ready to leave. But that's fine. We want to be faithful to Scripture, not to what sounds cool. But
yeah.
But it seems like that's like the general view towards Holy of Holies, and then moving his way out to the courtyard. And so Ezekiel's simply calling back, and he's almost like just like recalibrating you and being like, okay, so this is what I saw. Don't get distracted by the other stuff. This is what I'm seeing. Like the other stuff is the explanation of why, right? There's abominations, there's perversions, there's all this stuff, but this is the consequence. God is leaving. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, hopefully that's got it figured out. And
I think so.
we'll
So-
freak out more about it in the next chapter.
If we get to the next chapter.
If we just, what time is it?
It's 8:10.
Oh, we got time.
We're good.
And we got time.
Okay,
Everyone's
so
going, I think.
honestly, this chapter is 90% whirling wheels and 10% actual like plot. To go back to what the 10% of the plot. So what happens here? It's basically the first like 2 verses.
God's leaving.
Well, before God leaves. So basically, this thing and then God leaves.
The spirit lifted.
We already mentioned it before, but
What?
Well-
The man being told to enter between the whirling wheels?
well, like
No, it's about the coals.
well, yes and yes.
Wait.
He enters between the wheels to get the coals.
We're still on chapter 10, right?
Yeah, it's like the first 2.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was going 11. I thought you said we were.
Basically, I'm just saying, what does God tell the guy in Lynn to do?
He's supposed to go between the wheels. He's supposed to take up coals in his hands and then like scatter them over the city.
Yeah. What's going on with that? We already talked about it a little bit, but that was before we actually got to it.
It's sacrificial atonement imagery.
Yeah.
from
Well, and it seems like it's almost.
And you also see it with Isaiah too, right? Like when Isaiah's in God's presence, he's freaking out. Like, I can't be here. I should die in God's presence. The angel comes to him and he puts a coal on his lips and is like, your sins are now atoned for.
Yeah, but the key difference there, it is similar though, because the guy's like, he specifically gets a coal from the altar and does that.
Yeah.
The key difference is that with Isaiah, the coal is being touched to him to cleanse him, whereas this seems to be an act of judgment. To where it seems like, as best I can tell, it is mixing two different things together. To where you have the imagery of the people being sanctified with blood, and like the priest would sprinkle the blood over them, and that was them being cleansed and set apart. Whereas here, the coal, which belongs on the altar, and the altar is where you put sacrifices, is now being sprinkled over the city, to where it's almost like the city is becoming a big altar.
Yeah.
And that's because the people do not have the blood sprinkled on them. So they are now going, rather than being covered by a sacrifice, they are going to become the sacrifice. Mm-hmm. To where there's the coals are being spread out towards like the whole city is going to be like.
Thank you for putting what I said earlier in your words.
Yeah, it's just the imagery, just the altar just got a lot bigger.
Yeah.
Especially whenever you consider the fact that Jerusalem is kind of just like a square. It's just like it just expanded to where the whole city is now an altar, and it's because the people have failed to fulfill their duty as a kingdom of priests who are sprinkled in the blood.
When I first read it, I was like trying to decide if it was like if the coals were good or bad. I came to the conclusion, yes.
Yeah.
Because I had the same thought with like the whole Isaiah thing and then the Leviticus thing, and now that since you mentioned the Sodom and Gomorrah thing earlier, there even could be a sense of like the coals being scattered, almost like being fire and brimstone. Yeah. But I think they work one and the same, because you see this theme throughout the entire all Scripture, but even in the Old Testament, this like theme of purifying fire, to where like the fire of destruction is also the fire of purification, to where the way that I think from God's perspective, the same fire that maybe the people call destruction is what He calls purification. And so it's not like we kind of already said that, but like I think that it's kind of, in one sense, it's judgment, but it's also atonement. It's also purification. It's all towards the same goal.
I'm not gonna lie, you perfectly set up the outline that I have for the second section of Ezekiel, because like the imagery that I picked up on, it's at the end of the second section. It's in like chapters like I think 18 through 23 or something like that. But the imagery is of, or it might be earlier. I don't remember. We'll get to it hopefully. But it's the imagery of like fire, to where it starts off as fire of judgment, but by the end it is a fire of like purging and purification, to where like God uses this repeated motif of fire, fire, fire. But what began to burn them and destroy them actually purified them. And so that's a nice consistency. I liked it.
Let's go.
So like in Sodom and Gomorrah, the fire came down from the heavens, whereas now the coal is being laid onto Jerusalem so that the fire can rise up, and they will become the pleasing aroma to God whenever they have been burned and refined, and finally they will be a pleasing sacrifice. So
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, because apparently the sacrifices of bulls and lambs and goats was not sufficient.
And I don't think they're doing that at this point anyway.
Nope.
It's almost like
true.
he's implying that there may be an ultimate human sacrifice in the future.
It's like the sacrifices were not enough to get rid of their sin, and so they will become a sacrifice. But then this kind of brings us back to like the flood story. Okay, but how is this going to end? Is this going to be a rinse and repeat cycle, or is there going to be an ultimate sacrifice who shows up, who has conquered sin, and through his death there will actually be true redemption and restoration? Yeah.
Yep. Is there anything else? Chapter 10 is pretty straightforward. Sticks out to y'all here.
I don't know if straightforward would be the right word.
Well, maybe not.
There's not a lot of action that takes place,
yes.
And that's because most of it is not straightforward, because he's just talking about these divine, unearthly beings that like we can barely even imagine.
That's true.
So it's like
the complete opposite of straightforward.
Yeah, it's straightforward in the sense of if you're just focusing on the narrative, pretty simple. But if you're focusing on the finer details, it's like, I don't
But
know.
now the question is, do we want to spend an hour breaking down what each of these divine beings are? You know.
I don't think we'd be able to. I think that so many people try to do that, whereas in reality, I think that the reason Ezekiel spends so much time explaining it is probably because he's telling us everything there is to know. Like, if there was an easy just like category, he would just be like, oh yeah, this was a blah blah blah. But instead, he's like, he's just saying, I'm going to tell you everything I saw, just so that you can have the mental image and then move on. You know, so it's like, in this case, it seems like the multiplication of words is not for greater depth. It's actually just to like give you a good imagery of what's going on, and then you can progress.
Like this isn't something comparable to what you can find on Earth.
Yeah. Whereas, of course, people usually get their opposite message, and they end up lingering on this, and they're like, "What's going on with these beings?" It's like, well, I don't know.
Well, just know that they're complicated and you can't find them.
Yeah. Ezekiel was a prophet, and he's seeing stuff going down in Jerusalem while he's in Babylon. And even he's like, "Those are wild beings." So if you think that you're going to be smarter than Ezekiel,
good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Is there anything else in this chapter that stuck out to y'all?
He's really transfixed on the wheels.
Yeah.
Like he goes about describing them in very almost exhaustive.
I like that it's pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah.
It sounds like, it's like a chariot that doesn't have to move at all. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, and something that, it's I guess you could describe it as like a royal procession, right?
Yeah,
to where
sure.
it's like a king leaving his palace, again, compared to David. But this king is not just on like a normal chariot. There were ancient thrones that had like chariot wheels and stuff like that, which is kind of cool. But this is a whole different thing. Like his retinue and his posse who is with him are these like weird, creepy creature, human cherub hybrid things. And it is like this royal procession to where nobody else is seeing this. He's seeing this alone. And it would stick out to you to where you're just like, you want to describe every detail. Just to, I guess, even just to express to people the weight of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if it just said that, like, a man walked out of the Holy of Holies and, like, moved his way towards the east, you might be able to be like, oh, I guess that man was God. But, like, you can't read this and miss the point.
Yeah.
It's like only God himself is, like, accompanied by this type of group of people. Like,
yeah.
And so if you're a Jewish person, you're like, okay, I get what's going on here.
Like, I mean, to get the narrative, you just could have said God dipped from the Holy Temple, and that would have been it. But but you have to have all this detail in here to like show God set apart. He's holy. He's different.
Well, and I think also the reason for the detail is because he wants this story to weigh deeply for the Jewish people. Because keep in mind, he's primarily writing to people in Babylon, right?
Yeah.
They're not seeing all this. But as he tells this to them, he is wanting them, like, he can't just say, hey, God left. Because that's not strong enough. He needs them to see it, to where it's not just like, it's not like a voice just spoke in his ear and said, hey, by the way, I'm leaving. He's like, no, I had a vision, and this is what I saw. And he is walking them step by step through it, so that as he's telling more details, they're envisioning it in their heads, and their hearts are just falling. Because they realize, like, they're thinking, oh yeah, we're probably going to go back in, like, a few years.
Mm-hmm.
But God's coming to join you in Babylon, which he probably wouldn't do if he was just going to bring you back. You know? It's like, this is what he did whenever he sent Jacob down to Egypt. He said, I will go with you, and I will bring you back up. The only reason he would have to do that is if you're going to be there for a while. And so I guess the only thing I would say that sticks out to me is that you have the further progression eastward, to where not only does he move to the threshold, but then it says the glory of Yahweh departed from the threshold of the house and stood over the cherubim. And that's because the cherubim also moved further outward. So it's like I guess you could almost say he left the cherubim where he was at, and now he's remounting them now that they're outside the doors, I guess.
Yeah. Well, Forrest said the cherubim, so it could be like from the ark to the threshold to the courts to the actual like chariot.
Okay.
Maybe.
I can see that. And then when the cherubim... Was that?
No, it just seems like when it says cherubim, it's referring to like the vehicle.
Yeah. And so when the cherubim departed, they lifted their wings and rose up from the earth. And so you just see them like it almost like imagine like aliens or something like that.
Like UFO, yeah.
Or like sci-fi, just like it just raises up. Like it doesn't... I mean, it's kind of funny to us because even, like, we actually have flying devices nowadays, but like this would be more like a helicopter than an airplane. It's not like it like takes off; it just like lifts up.
Yeah.
And so I can't help but think that like this is what the apostles would think of whenever they see Jesus ascending to heaven too. You know?
Oh, yeah.
And him like literally being taken up in the clouds, like it's similar language.
Mm-hmm.
When the cherubim departed, they lifted their wings and rose up from the earth in my sight, wheels beside them, and they stood at the entrance of the east gate. So this is really cool. I really want us to all take a trip to Israel. Because like for me, I've been there so many times, like I can picture this in my head. This is like the beautiful gate or the golden gate. Right now it's sealed. Whenever Muslims were in charge of Jerusalem, like back in like a long time ago, they sealed the gate because there was the Jewish prophecy says that the Messiah will enter from the Mount of Olives. And so they said, no, he won't, which I've never fully understood why, because Muslims also believe in the Messiah. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I probably need to look into that. But
I'm sorry, I was going to go on about that. And again, I've heard there's some similarities between like the Antichrist and the Muslims, like Final Shema.
Yeah, we don't need to get into that right now.
Yeah.
But currently, just so you know the state of this gate, because there is a gate in Jerusalem to the east of the Temple Mount. Now there's a mosque there, but the east gate it is sealed currently, and to make matters even worse, there's a Muslim cemetery right in front of it, because they wanted to make it so that if the Messiah tried to get through, he would have to defile himself and walk over like unclean dead bodies to get into the temple.
Oh.
As like to me, it's like, okay, if the Messiah is going to do this, like I think he's got to figure it out. But
Probably.
but that's where this is at. So it's directly to the east, and if you've ever seen like a map of Jerusalem, this is directly heading towards the Mount of Olives, right? So there's a valley in between, and right when you get out of that gate, it just goes straight into the valley and then the Mount of Olives. And so this is in many ways, it's a reverse journey of what Jesus did whenever he entered into Jerusalem on a donkey.
That's fair.
Right, so it's he's basically just going the opposite way. Jesus probably didn't go through the Golden Gate, but he might have. And so it's literally just the opposite trajectory. And so I just want to highlight that it's the reverse trajectory.
Yeah.
So,
Last thing I probably add to this chapter, because something you said reminded me of it, or made me think of it. But keeping in mind that this entire, well, not just this book, but really all of the Bible, but we've been talking about how the people of Israel, like they're not seeing, right? Like they're hearing, but they're not hearing. They're seeing, but they're not seeing. And in this chapter, we saw that they're even saying, God does not see us, whereas the whole point of this, or part of the point of this vision is that God does see.
yeah.
Something you said earlier made me think of the story with Elijah and like the army surrounding,
Mm-hmm.
where it kind of reminds me like part of the message of this could even be to the people and to us, that like it's a reminder of the severity of things, because we don't there's much more going on than we realize. To where like when God leaves the temple, it's not like the people of Jerusalem see him leave the temple this way. This is something that only Ezekiel's privy to, but it's still happening.
That's a scary thought too, because I'm assuming that all the stuff that he saw in chapter 8 is going on while this is happening.
Mm-hmm.
To where there's still people worship, to where Ezekiel is seeing the stuff that nobody else is seeing, and as they're worshiping other gods, God is just leaving, and that's a scary thought. Like even just on a personal note, even right now, in this room, there could be stuff going on here spiritually that we don't even know of, and if God opened our eyes, we'd be like, "Whoa, this is crazy."
Yeah.
But the idea of God's presence departing from His house.
Mm-hmm. Or from that person, and them not being aware. That's a scary thought. Or I even think of that with King Saul, where right after David was anointed by Samuel, it says that the Spirit departed from Saul and rested on David. And I doubt that was a visible thing. Saul didn't know it, right? Saul just thought it was another day, but God left him, and that's a terrifying thought. It's just to where you've hardened your heart so much. And this is where, you could, I guess, get into the whole debate that people get into about, salvation and, whether you can lose it or not. But I think that would get distracted from the point. Yeah. It's
just the extreme language of this. The idea is, Ezekiel is getting to see this, but God didn't have to reveal this to him. God could have left silently and let nobody see it.
Yeah.
And that's a scarier thought. Like, even in this moment, God was being gracious. I don't know if that's what you were kind of getting at, but...
Yeah, no, I that was. And I think another part of it would be that it's a call for us to be paying more attention to, like, the world around us, to where I think even though the people in Jerusalem had no possible way of actually physically seeing it, they should have been able to see that this was going to happen.
Yeah.
Because this was hundreds of years in the making. And I think the same thing would go for us. Like, it's like, if you want to make like the marriage analogy, it's like you come home one day and your wife leaves you. It isn't like it just was a sudden thing. It's like you should have seen that happening for months or years in the making.
Yeah.
You don't just like suddenly like, oh, what happened? You know, it's like, no.
Yeah, you cheated on your wife every single day for the last 10 years. She was gonna leave eventually. Like, it's like, or it makes me think of the meme where it's like the guy's like shooting the person and saying, why did I why did I shoot him?
It's like, who killed?
Or who killed so and so? It's like, yeah, you did. To where it's like Ezekiel getting to see this is useful, but even then technically it isn't necessary because this isn't like, it surprises us because of how gracious God is, but it shouldn't be surprising because it's what they've deserved for a long time.
Yeah, and, God showed him it because of his particular purpose, and so he needs to like understand in maybe a way that other people wouldn't have a chance to because of, again, his mission. But again, this kind of gets into the whole, like, what we talked about with Genesis, like, what does it mean to see? What does it mean to hear? And it's not just about physically seeing things, it's about being able to hear God. And so by this point, they should have known this was going to happen, even if they didn't physically see it.
Yeah. Well, it's like biblically, it's almost like true sight is not given by your eyes, it's given by like wisdom and discernment. Like, to where it's literally just knowing the heart of God and knowing how to conduct yourself well in life. That is true vision. To where you really don't need like physical vision is just, if anything, it can be a distraction. To where it causes you to focus on the wrong things. Whereas the wisdom and discernment given by God, that's what helps you to truly see in life and navigate.
That and also if you rely too much on sight, you basically are waiting for consequences to determine whether you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And like if you're waiting for the consequence means it's too late.
Yeah.
And so the same thing for the people here. Like, it's too late if you wait until Jerusalem gets destroyed to be like, oh, we messed up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Technically, you should never have that should never even come close to happening.
Yeah.
Oopsies. But yeah, I just thought I'd add that in there.
Yeah.
But is there anything else you have to comment about chapter 10? We can probably move on.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay. First up, I'll just go ahead and read verse 13, and then we'll talk. Moreover, the Spirit lifted me up and brought me to the east gate of the house of Yahweh, which faced eastward. And behold, at the entrance of the gate there were 25 men, and I saw among them Jazaniah son of Azur and Pelatiah son of Benaiah, officials of the people. He said to me, Son of man, these are the men who devise wickedness and give evil counsel in this city, who say, the time is not near to build houses. This city is the pot, and we are the flesh. Therefore prophesy against them, son of man, prophesy. Then the Spirit of Yahweh fell upon me, and he said to me, Say, thus says Yahweh, So you say, house of Israel, for I know what comes up in your spirit. You have multiplied your slain in this city, and you have filled its streets with them. Therefore thus says Lord Yahweh, Your slain whom you have laid in the midst of the city are the flesh, and this city is the pot. But I will bring you out of it. You have feared a sword, so a sword I will bring upon you, Lord Yahweh declares. And I will bring you out of the midst of the city, and give you into the hands of strangers, and execute judgment against you. You will fall by the sword. I will judge you to the border of Israel, so you shall know that I am Yahweh. This city will not be a pot for you, nor will you be the flesh in the midst of it, but I will judge you to the border of Israel. Thus you will know that I am Yahweh, for you have not walked in my statutes, nor have you executed my judgments, but have executed according to the judgments of the nations around you. Now it happened as I prophesied that Pelatiah the son of Benaiah died. Then I fell on my face and cried out with a loud voice and said, Alas, Lord Yahweh, will you bring the remnant of Israel to complete destruction? What happens there?
So, Ezekiel's told to prophesy against the leaders of the people, essentially. And as he's prophesying against them, he's saying, look, there's a lot of blood. He's telling them there's a lot of blood on your hands. You're guilty of a lot of inequity. However, God's going to bring you out of it, out of the cauldron, which is the pot that, essentially the city that people have died in, Jerusalem. He's going to bring them out and bring a sword upon them, and then and he's essentially saying that a remnant is going to be taken to a foreign land where they're going to be persecuted. And generally that aligns with the way Babylonians and empires would take over one another, is that you would get rid of the ruling class of people, right? Because they provide the most order and structure to the civilization. So if you get rid of them, then you could go ahead, deport some of the middle class people, and then you could leave the poor people there, because it's unlikely that they're going to be able to organize or have the resources to get a rebellion together.
Yeah, so I imagine that, like, when it says I judge you to the border, I imagine it means, like, as far as the border. So it's like either he chases them out entirely, or it's like no one in Israel will escape the sword.
I think he's saying no one in Israel will escape the sword. Like, everyone's gonna be caught up in this, no matter.
Yeah, well, I'm saying it's both.
Yeah.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to distract you. I just did a little happy dance because of the cake.
You're good.
Nice.
But
so rewinding a bit.
And I also wanted to touch on that, like, some dude flat out dies while he's prophesying.
Yeah. So
he's like, Anyway.
So rewinding a bit, you started saying, like, what he was supposed to prophesy, but before that, what does he show him? And what does he show him, but also what does he specifically accuse these people of saying?
And he shows Ezekiel 25 now.
That's more than five.
And he accuses, and he goes, Son of man, so he's telling Ezekiel what they're guilty of. These are the men who devise iniquity and give wicked counsel. And they say, the time is not near, we're going to be perfectly fine. And they assume God's judgment's never going to happen. He's like, we can keep doing this. We can keep worshiping false gods, killing people, and we're going to be fine. Nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, that's the main thing. Basically, the main focus is around the fact that they basically aren't thinking that God's going to do anything anytime soon or ever in that matter.
And they're just like, it's another day. You can go about your business as per usual. Whereas God's telling them this is what they're guilty of. Their judgment's coming soon, and you need to go prophesy against them. Which raises an interesting question, right? Because if God wants, maybe He's prophesying against them to the people of Babylon, and not to them directly, unless He's prophesying against them directly in the spirit, which maybe that's implied, I don't know. However, I would find it very difficult for Him to prophesy to the people in Jerusalem if He's in Babylon.
Ezekiel's just like, woe to you! Just like,
I'm sure God can make it happen.
He's like facing towards the city and he's just yelling.
I'm sure God can make it happen if He puts them to sleep and then gives them a vision of Ezekiel prophesying.
Well, he could write them letters or something like that too.
Yeah.
That too, yes, but
Yeah.
I'm sure God's prophesying against them. He could either send them a letter and then save a copy and give it to the people in Babylon. Being like, hey, this is what's going down. These are the charges brought against them, so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's hard to say because in the chapter it seems like as far as the chapter is concerned, it seems to think that he's like there and that the guy dies and then like the same scene carries on.
Exactly.
But
sorry.
No, I'm saying it just it makes it kind of weird.
It is a little confusing. I would still assume he's there in spirit, like watching this happen.
Yeah.
But again, I'm a little perplexed as like how
So
they're
the
receiving
people of
these
Jerusalem
judgments.
are hearing Ezekiel's disembodied voice.
And I guess to be clear, it never says that he was brought in the spirit. It says the spirit brought him.
Yeah.
And so it could very well be that Ezekiel is presently there, and maybe he's just been doing all these things covertly to where like you can almost just imagine him like kind of covered up, just walking around to where nobody knows it's him. But he might very well physically be in Jerusalem, which is
Yeah.
also kind of
I think it's probably another like I don't even know if vision was a like I don't know if that word popped up earlier.
Yeah.
But even then, even if it did, it's like a vision doesn't necessarily mean it has to be like a dream.
Yeah.
Like a vision is a thing to see.
Yeah.
And so God can still show him what's going on. That's a vision.
Yeah. Yeah, to where I think it's just like in our heads, it's easier to imagine. Like whenever we hear something being caught up in the spirit, we got like even in Revelation when it says I was in the spirit and I was in the like throne of God and stuff. We kind of, I think this is like kind of the whole Gnostic influence in our worldviews. We have this clear divide between physical and spiritual, and that's just not how the Bible looks at things. Like physical and spiritual aren't the opposite of one another, right? Really, it's seen and unseen. You know, so
Yeah.
like there are physical things that we see, but that doesn't mean that spiritual things are any less physical, right? They're just different, right? There's something that's like they're unseen to us, but they can still very well be physical things.
Yeah.
To where like whenever you have whenever the angels like they show up to people and they're just men. It's like they're making themselves seen, and so
Yeah.
we kind of create that divide, and I think that's just that's probably more Greek than it is Hebrew.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. But yeah. So he mentions how they're getting like bad counsel, and I don't know if it's like the same guy or he's related, but it says Jezaniah son of Azur. In Jeremiah 28, there's a guy. It's like Hananiah son of Azur, and he's the guy that prophesies the whole like in 2 years the Jehoiakim and then will be brought back. And that there's a whole thing between him and Jeremiah to where like there's like it's kind of a weird story. It's done like with like the wooden yoke where like he breaks the wooden yoke and God says or Jeremiah says like you basically broke the wooden yoke but now God's gonna give you an iron yoke.
well, and this is the same guy that we saw a few chapters ago, right? In chapter 8.
I think the other guy may have been Pelatiah or
Was it
something.
not? Yeah. Oh no, that was Jezaniah son of Shaphan.
Yes.
Okay, so they both share the same name, Jezaniah, but they're different
Oh,
Jezaniahs.
okay. Yeah, and that's still assuming. I guess like with names are names, you know.
What do you think it means when it says this city is the pot and we are the flesh?
Yeah, I couldn't find too much on it, but it seems to be like the main point seems to be about like a matter of like security and safety, to where it's like I think I looked up the words and like the only really thing I could find was whenever the Israelites grumble in the wilderness, they mention like in Egypt they like ate flesh out of the pot, but like there's really not anywhere else where the terms pop up.
Well, is that not just the imagery of like being boiled alive? Like, because it says the city is the pot and the people are the flesh. Is it not the image of like cooking meat in a pot?
Well, I think it's the imagery of cooking meat in a pot.
Yeah,
but,
and then like some people are going to be saved.
The time is not
Right.
near to build houses. That almost seems contradictory to me, to where it's like
Oh, I forgot to.
well, I guess the thing is
these guys who are described as being evil counselors and wicked, and they're giving false counsel to people. They're saying the time is not near to build houses, which essentially means like don't put your roots down here. But then also this is the city is the pot, we are the flesh. Like you're secure already. Like I don't know. It just be that
yeah.
I'm misunderstanding something.
So on top of that, I saw a couple different things for the house thing. What do y'all think? Like, what do y'all think is going on with that whole thing? Because I have a couple different ideas. I think people kind of assume one thing, but like, what do you think? What do you think they're actually saying?
The time is not
The command there sounds similar to what, and I was in the restroom when you read the whole chapter, so I might be like running off like not enough context.
You're good.
Okay, why does the thing keep turning off? That's weird.
The only reason I was like I'm not sure if the imagery is supposed to be referring to boiling alive, just because they seem to use it in a positive way, whereas
Yeah.
God flips it on them. It
Yeah,
says-
I was looking later on. Whenever he was describing it, I was looking later on, and so I think I might have just been misunderstanding it. That's what I was saying. Like, because I wasn't in here when y'all read it, I might have just been.
I mean,
Yeah.
there is a
Yeah.
boiling pot chapter later in the
Yeah, but okay. So my question is, when it's talking about the city, is it talking? I'm assuming it's talking about Jerusalem itself, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Because
That's why the house thing is confusing.
well, yeah, because the time is not here to build houses. That sounds like what the people were saying in Jeremiah,
Like the flip of
like in
like,
Babylon.
like build houses because
Yeah.
they're gonna be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking that it's like, well, if you felt secure in the city, then
Yeah.
wouldn't you say the opposite?
I have a couple things it could be, and that's why I'm asking what y'all's thoughts are first.
One thing it could be like if they're talking about security, it's almost like, I guess, hypothetically, and again, I probably need to read the rest of the chapter, but it could be if they're thinking, okay, some people might be preparing, oh, we need to prepare to rebuild Jerusalem after it's destroyed.
Oh,
Whereas they're saying the time is not near to build houses because they're not going to fall. You know what I mean? To where it could be something like that.
I can
but-
see that.
But then the city is the pot, we are the flesh. To where that could almost be like it could be saying it as if like the flesh is more malleable and like prone to destruction, whereas like they're viewing the city as like being like sturdy, right? To where it's like it's almost like a cast iron skillet. Like the city ain't going down, right? We might fall,
Yeah.
but as long as we're in the city, we're protected by the walls of the pot.
Mm-hmm.
And then it could be that maybe God is repurposing that later on, like to where it's almost like He's using imagery of it to describe them almost being boiled alive. But I don't know. Because it says the city will not be a pot for you. So it seems like they're using like the imagery of a pot as if like if you think about it, like flesh in the middle of like a pot, it's like four walls all around it,
Yeah.
and it's sturdy, right? It's not going to break. And so I'm thinking they're saying like it's like the imagery of just being totally
Secure.
safe.
Mhm.
And so they're like, we don't need to rebuild houses because these houses aren't falling. And then God says, it's not going to be a pot for you. And then like later in Ezekiel, He could repurpose it to be like, I'm going to boil you in that pot. To where it's like he's running with their imagery, but changing the meaning.
Yeah. Yeah, I assume that the pot thing has to do with like the security. With the house thing, I saw a couple different things. It's also weird because this is one of those places where the Septuagint also does say something different. But the way that I had gathered it is that some people say you're supposed to read it in context of 2 Kings, to where there's like a lot of people being displaced, like refugees are displaced into Jerusalem from like the Babylonian exile.
Okay.
Like from like being pushed out, like pushed outward. Whereas like, I'm not entirely sure how that would work because the idea for that would be like, the people in Jerusalem got displaced, so there's empty houses, but then like there's like people in Jerusalem that like need housing, like being displaced, like refugees, and so I guess they would be saying like, the time is near to build houses because like we have enough
Yeah.
like housing to like take care of everybody. And the Septuagint says, "Have not the houses been newly built?" Which is kind of different.
But I mean, that could still roll with the idea of it being secure. Like it's like these houses ain't falling apart on their own. Like
Yeah,
these are brand new.
they're brand new, so yeah, they're sturdy. I think no matter how you specifically take it, the idea definitely has to do with like security, to where, and as we'll read further, like, especially once you get to the chapter 12, God's gonna make a point of like making sure that people realize that everything's gonna happen soon. To where I think here the whole idea is like they don't think that anything's gonna happen anytime soon. They think that they're good.
Is that 2 Kings 25?
Yeah,
Okay.
like 24, 25.
Well, because there is a Jazaniah who shows up in that chapter.
Okay, there is Jezniah who shows up.
Let me look. It says Jazaniah, son of the Maccathite. Let me just see. It's the people who were left in the land of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had left. He appointed Gedaliah, son of Ahikam, son of Shaphan. Then the commanders of the military forces, they came down. So they came to Gedaliah, Ishmael, and Jezaniah, they and their men. And Gedaliah swore to them and said, "Do not be afraid of the servants of the Chaldeans. Live in the land and serve the king of Babylon, and it will be well with you." But it happened in the 7th month, Ishmael, son of Nethaniah, the son of Elishama, of the royal seed, came with 10 men and struck Gedaliah down, and he died, along with the Jews and the Chaldeans who were with him at Mizpah. So then all the people, both small and great, and the commanders of military forces rose and went to Egypt, for they were afraid of the Chaldeans. So that's the story where like the guy's like, "Hey, you can stay in Jerusalem. We're safe here," and then he gets killed.
Oh, okay.
Which, I mean, it doesn't really change it, but I'm assuming that would be the same guy. Just because it seems like it is associated with, like, it's the same time period, because it's specifically Jezaniah, who was in Jerusalem after Nebuchadnezzar sent one group off, which would be Ezekiel. And so,
Yeah.
that would line up. I don't know if it's talking about the same moment, but since it's the same time period, the idea is that this guy's just corrupt in general, and they're probably sharing the same type of message.
Yeah, and like I said, and Jeremiah, Hananiah, son of Ezra, seems to be like, some people seem to think they're brothers. I don't know if that would be an assumption you can make, but he's the guy who in Jeremiah says like that like they're gonna return back in 2 years.
Yeah.
And so that would make sense that they'd both be kind of saying the same things.
Yeah. There's also Jezaniah, son of Jeremiah, in Jeremiah.
Oh, nice.
I don't think I ever realized that Jezaniah was like a frequent name in the Bible. That's
Yeah, me
fun.
neither.
Anyways, sorry. Back to this.
Yes. Sorry.
Just out of curiosity, again off topic here, but what does the name Jezaniah mean?
Yahweh hears. Yeah, it's
I'm not doing a lot of hearing.
yeah, it's not the word like Shema though. It's a different word.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's Azan.
It's kind of ironic.
Wait, is it like the Yah, Azan, Yah?
Well, it means God hears. Or
I guess so. Yeah, like that's what it seems like it is.
It's like Yahweh hears my Yahweh?
Yeah, well, it might the first part doesn't have like the Yod He. It's just Yod, and so it could just be like
Oh.
like
Just a form of the word.
yeah.
Gotcha. But yeah, okay, so they say this. They seem to say like what we just talked about. So how does God, like, what does God tell Ezekiel to say to them? What is the prophesying?
This city is not your sanctuary. I will literally chase you to the borders of Israel, and you will die, essentially. And this
Yeah.
is because you
Yeah.
were bad.
Well, it seems like he is repurposing their metaphor here because
Yeah.
they're saying we are the flesh and the city is the pot. He's like, no, the dead in your city are the flesh, and the city is the pot for them.
Yeah.
For you, it won't be the pot. And so it's like, it's almost like he's being snarky a bit because you don't put live animals into a pot, right? You put dead animals. And so he says, okay, if you want to run with that imagery, the dead people, they are, yeah, it'll be the pot for them. Because whenever the city goes up in flames, they're going to burn. You, though, it's not going to be a pot for you. You're not going to be secure in here. I'm going to take you out.
I almost wonder, like, the way that he starts off talking, it makes me wonder if, like, the implication is that, like going back to, like, what the people are saying, it makes me wonder if the implication, the kind of dark implication is that, like, there's room in the city because of all the people they're killing. Because he says, so you say, for I know what comes up in your spirit, you have multiplied your slain, and they have filled the streets with them. For like, it's almost like he's either twisting what they're saying into like they're like
Oh, I see.
housing the city with dead people, or he's saying like the only reason there's room is because they've killed so many people. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's really that.
Well, it's like he's changing it to where it almost sounds like they're saying they, like what they're talking about is like that they're secure, but he's almost taking their phrase and it's almost like them saying that they don't need to expand, and he's like, yeah you don't need to expand because everybody's dead. And
it's like they didn't realize what they were saying was true, but like not in the way they thought it was.
yeah, well, and that would make sense because that means he's repurposing both of the things they said.
Yeah.
He's repurposing we don't need to rebuild houses, or we don't need to build houses, and we don't need, like, the city is our pot. He's like, correct. But let me change what you mean by that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting now. Is like that's why he's like, so you say, because I know what you're doing. I see all the people you're killing. So yeah, they're gonna be the ones inhabiting these houses, not you.
Yeah, you keep saying that phrase. I do not think it means what you think it means. Because of the implications. I'll bring you out of the midst of the city and give you into the hands of strangers and execute judgments against you, and you will fall by the sword. I will judge you to the border of Israel. I think I heard y'all talking about that whenever I came back in from the restroom, but like,
oh yeah,
is that just the idea of them just being like they're just like there's no place safe for them in the land?
Yeah, I think either way the idea is they're nowhere safe, because again the whole idea is like with like the pot and stuff. Like the pot is contained, where it's like he's saying like they're going to be kicked out of the pots, and there's nowhere for them to run to.
Yeah.
But it could be that he's like judging them up to the border, where he's like the idea is like pushing them out, or it could also be that he's like judging them as far as like everywhere within Israel will be judged.
And it's like emphasizing the isolated, like it's a very direct judgment from him
Yeah.
up to the border. Then I'll stop.
Yeah.
It's like they're safer beyond the borders of Israel than they would be within.
Yeah. I guess it's kind of a both in that case.
Oh.
And he says again, the city will not be a pot for you, nor will you be the flesh in the midst of it, but I will judge you to the border of Israel. And so I think in that verse it maybe is making it even more clear that the idea of the pot is in reference to like containment.
Yeah.
Because the direct contrast is not only will you not be a pot, but I'm going to judge you to the border of Israel.
Yeah.
That seems to shed more light on that. Like the flesh is more like they are flesh, they're humans, like they're flesh in the pot.
Yeah. Then you have the repeated phrase, thus you will know I'm Yahweh, which always calls back to the Egypt. Like the Exodus story.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost turning this into like not a second Exodus, but a second
judgment on Egypt.
Yeah. Which makes even more sense when you consider exactly what he's judging them for. Like, I mean, he's judging them for a lot of things, but especially considering the last couple chapters, he's specifically focusing on the idolatry.
Yeah.
Didn't we also discuss, sorry to interrupt, but didn't we also discuss in Jeremiah how the Israelites, like, oh yeah, we need to go to Egypt to, consolidate and maybe get a little stronger and escape judgment, and Jeremiah's like, no, God says don't go there, don't go back to Egypt, and they're like, we're going anyway, and they drag them along. And then Egypt's going to get destroyed anyway, so I think there's a little bit of a callback there too. But
well, they become like Pharaoh because they just harden their hearts so much. And
exactly.
That's my two cents on it.
And then as he's preaching, which I guess he is there pronouncing this, and then the dude dies. So
The dude just like
Literally just cheers over.
mid judgment pronunciation.
and then that causes him to repeat the same question he had asked earlier.
Yeah.
To where again it's echoing Abraham, alas, Lord Yahweh, will you bring the remnant of Israel to complete destruction? And that really is sad if you consider like where he's at right now, because like we always throw around the language of like remnant, but think about it, like Israel was 12 tribes, and now you're down to basically one tribe in one city. Like this is heartbreaking, and like and whenever he's in that city, and God is not saying, all right, we're going to save everybody. God says, this place isn't going to be safe for you. I'm going to run you out. I'm going to kill you. And Ezekiel's like, God, are you going to destroy even the remnant? And the question makes sense because it's like, God, you made all these promises. Like, you can't, if you keep killing people, there's not going to be anybody left. Like, it's not like, I don't know, we always like, I think because we focus so much on, like, or maybe this is just me, but since we spend so much of our time talking about like the Jewish people and the Israelite people, we kind of forget that they're just like a tiny, tiny people group. Like, but if you just look at the, like I even think about like in Revelation, whenever it's like God marked out 144,000. Why? Well, it's because if you read Revelation, it talks about like a third of the population dying. if you just killed a random third of the population, there is a good chance that all the Jewish people would be dead. Because they are like less than 1% of the population. And so, if you just wiped out a random 33%, there's a good chance that they were there. And so, God has to mark out 144,000 of them just to make sure that, like, you know, not everybody gets killed. And so I just...
Tie in Revelation, sorry to interrupt.
Oh.
Because I heard 144,000.
Yeah, I was just making a comparison, but I'm just saying, like, it's just, like, given all of God's promises, you can see why Ezekiel asks this, because it's like, Israel is already, like, a tiny nation. Earlier today, Pastor Rob and I were, like, looking at, like, a globe. And I was just talking about, like, how big Africa is. Like, whenever you look at, like, a flat map, it crunches everything down, you know? And all the things that are, like, closer to the equator get expanded, and all the things that are further from the equator get, like, condensed, you know? And so whenever you actually look at the things in full size, like Israel is already really tiny on a map, but it's closer to the equator. Whereas, if you actually, like, if you look at it, it's so small. And that's where, I mean, nowadays there's Jewish people everywhere, but, like, I mean, even then it's still a really small population, and millions of them got killed, you know, less than a century ago. But Israel, like, at this time period, it's tiny, and they're down to one tribe, and it's just, like, a few of them left.
Yeah.
And so you can see why Ezekiel's like, God, is now really the time to be, like, killing people? Because, I mean, like, literally, as he's speaking, another one dies. And he's like, we're about to go extinct. That's what it feels like. And to me, I think that makes it even more remarkable whenever the people, like the Jewish people, are still around to this day.
Yeah.
It's like, this should not have been the case. Like, it's not as if, like, half of the United States got wiped out and then we rebuilt. No, this is a tiny nation that was 12 tribes, went down to, like, just a tiny little, like, fraction of one tribe, and somehow they're still cooking.
And they generally have been disliked by pretty much everybody.
Yeah, it's not like that they're just, like, people just love them. It's like, no, like, pretty much every single generation has been filled with a bunch of people who want them annihilated, and that's just pretty crazy, but that's just, you understand where Ezekiel's coming from. Like, if you just think of it from that perspective, it's like, I don't know, just imagine that, just think of, like, Seabrook, right? Imagine that 99% of the Seabrook population was, like, killed over the course of, like, a century. And then the mayor of Seabrook shows up and says, all right, like, there's, like, 12 people left. All right, well, I'm not happy with a lot of y'all, so, like, 10 of y'all need to die. You'd be like, dude, like, we're already almost done. Like, this is not the time for killing more. And so you see where Ezekiel's coming from, but...
Yeah. So we only read through, like, half the chapter, but for this section, is there anything else y'all wanted to add?
That makes sense. I was wondering why we weren't talking about the back half at all.
Yeah. Well, I figured it's probably good to, like, just read that first.
That makes sense.
But basically all of what you said is a good segue into the back half of the chapter. Which is probably the only positive chapter section we're gonna read for a while.
Well, I was wondering because I was like, the back half is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, I'll go ahead and read the rest of the chapter. Then the word of Yahweh came to me, saying, Son of man, your brothers, your relatives, your fellow exiles, and the whole house of Israel, all of them, are to those whom the inhabitants of Jerusalem have said, Go far from Yahweh, this land has been given to us as a possession. Therefore say, Thus says Lord Yahweh, Though I had removed them far away among the nations, and though I had scattered them among the countries, yet I was a sanctuary for them a little while in the countries where they had gone. Therefore, say, Thus says Lord Yahweh, I will gather you from the peoples and assemble you out of the countries among which you have been scattered, and I will give you the land of Israel. When they come there, they will remove all its detestable things and all its abominations from it. And I will give them one heart, and give within them a new spirit. And I will take the heart of stone out of their flesh, and give them a heart of flesh, that they may walk in my statutes, and keep my judgments, and do them. Then they will be my people, and I shall be their God. But as for those whose hearts walk after their detestable things and abominations, I will give what is due for their way on their heads, declares Lord Yahweh. Then the cherubim lifted up their wings with the wheels beside them, and the glory of the God of Israel hovered above them. The glory of Yahweh went up from the midst of the city, and stood over the mountain which is east of the city. Now the Spirit lifted me up, and brought me in a vision by the Spirit of God to the exiles in Chaldea. So the vision that I had seen went up and away from me. Then I told the exiles all the things which Yahweh had shown me.
Alright, two things here. This is even weirder because he's from Babylon, but it ends with saying God took him in a vision to the exiles in Chaldea. And it's like, wait, and that sounds even less physical, but but he says, he returned.
Yeah.
Other comment. This is basically just God saying, I'll be back. Like,
True.
I love that. Like, this moment is just like he says this long speech, and then he just leaves. He's just like, I'll be back. And then he just...
Doesn't elaborate further, just leaves.
Yeah.
Just did.
It's so awesome. Like, that's such a cool moment. I mean, it's not a happy moment. Like, but it's like bittersweet because he says, when I'm back, things are going to get good. But then he, like, departs from the temple. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So what happens in the back half here? In I guess a couple sentences or something.
So 45 minutes.
Well, first a couple sentences, and then we'll talk more about it.
Yeah.
But long story short, what happens here?
Long story short, God's basically like, yeah, I mean, those who remain faithful, those who are able to, those who return to Jerusalem after the exile, they will finally stop this ridiculous, idolatrous behavior, and I will be their God. They will be my people. They will worship me alone. And it's just cool. Because it's like, finally, the Jewish people are on the rise. And then,
I love that he basically just...
and then he leaves.
Yeah, well, then he leaves. But Ezekiel asks, like, hey, are you just going to, kill everybody? Like, what are you doing? And God just basically says, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And what I love about this is that he very easily could have just responded to Ezekiel how he responded to Habakkuk. Or he could have responded the way he responds to Job. And say, sorry, Ezekiel, were you there when I created the heavens and the earth? Like, were you... no, just the righteous will live by faith. But instead, he feels the need to give Ezekiel an answer.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of cool because it foreshadows where the story's heading because Ezekiel is going to elaborate on this more towards the end of the book to where really the end of the book is just an expanded version of this message to where it's God's going to give you a spirit, he's going to make a new covenant. And really chapters 1 through 11 are just detailing how in many ways the old covenant has failed to produce a lasting solution. And that was kind of the whole purpose of the old covenant. It was to point out that there needed to be something greater than simply a list of commands to obey. There has to be something to be provided, and God's going to provide it. But I just love that he's like, Ezekiel, I know what I'm doing. Just trust me. But he explains, what exactly he's going to do.
Yeah, it's not. I wouldn't call it like a thesis per se, but this section is almost like a thesis for the rest of the book, where it's like this is the central focus. This is what God's plan is.
And that makes sense because it's the end of the first section, right? It's like
that's true. When
you get into chapters 12 through I think it's 23, all of a sudden it's much more just explaining the judgment, whereas chapters 1 through 11 have been one long introduction to where we're getting introduced to who Ezekiel is, what his mission is going to look like, and then you have this elaborate 4 chapter long story where God is leaving the temple, and you feel like the first arc of the book has come to an end. And so it's kind of like whenever you're writing in an essay, you finish the introduction, what do you put at the very end? Your thesis, and then the rest of the book expands on it. And I know that's modern structure, but the reason we do that is because that's a good way of communicating an argument, right? You hook them in, and what better way to hook people than this visionary experience of God traveling on the clouds in Babylon and stuff. And so he hooks you with this opening vision, and then he has several chapters where he gives you a taste of the essay or argument to come, and you get to see him doing these different sign acts and theatrical stuff. And then he gets to the big thesis statement. God has left his temple. He's gonna be back, and it's gonna be better. But I need to explain to you how and why. And then the rest of the book is just him explaining this is why he left, this is what's going to happen as a result, and this is how he's going to come back, and this is what's going to happen as a result when he does come back. And like that's just like boom, 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 the rest of the book. And so
Yeah. I have a couple of questions. Once we basically for what he says about like whenever they return back, what he's going to do. But before we get to that point, first we just need to go back. So he says,
sorry, this is just a side thing. I just imagine like Ezekiel and Babylon trading notes with Daniel, and Ezekiel's like, "Oh my gosh, God says that when we go back to the land, things are gonna get good." And Daniel's like, "Yeah, did he give you a timeline?" And Ezekiel's like, "Wait, no, what? Like he just said it's gonna happen." And Daniel's like, "Yeah, he gave me a timeline." Like, sorry,
that's funny.
I just thought of that. I'm like, that's gotta be because we know that they knew each other. It's like, but I guess Daniel didn't get the timeline stuff till the time of Persia, so
that's true.
maybe Ezekiel was spared that information. Sorry, back to what you were saying.
Kind of he was spared after all he's been through.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, God's like, "Hey, Daniel, I've got more stuff I want to tell you. Let's just wait till Ezekiel's not here because I've made his life a living hell already. Like, just let's wait." But all right. Anyways, back to what you were saying.
Yeah, but. Well, I guess I didn't have much to say necessarily, but for basically the first like 14 through 18, or even just like through like 17, what does he basically say there? Like, it's not a complicated question. I think like, especially when you're considering like what we've been reading, I think maybe the question could also be like what maybe Ezekiel has in mind is like he's seeing all this stuff happening in Jerusalem, but keep in mind that the people like he is currently in Babylon, so like he's in Babylon where like he's not doing this kind of stuff, right? So he's a good guy, but he's over in Babylon. Meanwhile, the people in Jerusalem they get to stay in Jerusalem, but they're doing all these really crappy things. And so I think the question is also like, what about us? And I think that like part of God's response is basically saying like, yeah, y'all might be out of the land right now, but in the end, like they get to stay for now. Like he's basically it's almost like he's giving the bad guys like that they're like 15 minutes of fame before they like go for good.
Which is consistent. Like that's like when Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount says they've received the reward. Like their reward is now. Like the present is the reward. Like because I was trying to make sense of verse 15. But it does make sense if you remember that, like, Ezekiel's viewing this from being in Babylon. Mm-hmm. And so it's almost like the people in Jerusalem are, like, snobbish and, like, they're thinking that they're better than the ones who got exiled. Mm-hmm. And they're like, y'all got what y'all deserve. Y'all go far away from Yahweh because Jerusalem's been given to us as a possession. Because keep in mind, the first group of people that were kicked out were, like, royalty. And sure enough, whenever you read the narratives, the royalty is the one who's held accountable. And so it's almost like they're being like, ha, we're better than you. And God's like, you might think that.
Yeah.
But though I scattered them amongst the nations, I'm going to bring them back. You're just going to die. Like,
yeah. And remember earlier they said that they said Yahweh's gone away, like he doesn't see us. And so it's like literally like the imagery of like these people who like think that they can just get away with anything. Yeah. It's like they have it good. They're like it's almost like the sibling who it's like he gets all the good toys and stuff. Like the parent's not around to like see him, and he's like pointing at a sibling in timeout, and being like, "You're in timeout. Mom and dad are off doing something. I can do whatever I want." They're not seeing what's going on. It's like maybe the parents have like the camera they're looking and they're just like they're watching this all unfold. Yeah. It's like they tell the kid like let your brother let him do his thing for like however long because when the time comes around he's gonna wish he didn't do that.
Yeah. God's basically like, okay, good news, you guys get to stay in the land, hooray! Bad news, it's because your corpses are going to be here.
And this almost could, like, it almost kind of makes me think back to, like, Deuteronomy 32 when God says, like, I will remove my hand. He's like, I will see what their end will be. Like, again, another thing that we're reading in this is that God's going to leave the temple.
Yeah.
But, like, this isn't directly followed by the, like, big exile. This is before that happens.
Yeah.
So it's literally like as if God is removing his hand. He's like, okay, y'all want to keep on doing y'all's idolatry. I'll let y'all do it. I'll give y'all that. I'm just gonna leave, and I'm gonna let y'all do y'all's thing, and then when the time comes around, like you're gonna wish that you didn't do that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's because they feel entitled to God's provision and protection, while also trying to do stuff that he would not like in the shadows and thinking that he doesn't see them.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're in his temple bowing down to other gods. And so it's literally Deuteronomy 32 where he says, okay, I'm going to remove myself. And he says, I'm going to, you have given yourself to like those which are not gods. I'm going to go to that which was not a people. And so God is literally here going to Babylon. He's like, I'm going to go hang out with the people in Babylon, and let's just see how you handle things. And you keep reading Deuteronomy 32, he's like, where are your gods? Like, you said that Jerusalem is a pot for you, and that you're secure. Let's see if it is. Let's see, what is it that kept the walls of Jerusalem strong? Is it because your walls were stronger than the walls of Babylon? No, it's because I was your God. And now that I'm not there, let's see if Tammuz can help you out. She can't. And so it is quite literally, like, I'm glad you pointed out Deuteronomy 32, because this is quite literally what God says. Like,
Yeah.
he is quite literally in this moment removing himself, going to Babylon, and sending foreign oppressors. Like, that is like those are the three things that he said he was going to do. And it's like, this is quite literally like he's leaving the city. Like, that's kind of
It's
crazy.
not even just calling back to it. This is like literally the day fulfilled.
It's literally the moment. This is what we've been waiting for since Moses said it, and this is where they should be pooping their pants, because again, the walls, they're not that powerful. It was God who was sustaining them. So
Yep.
So the first half he says, though I removed them far away among the nations, and though I scattered them, I was a sanctuary for them. Right? So he was the one, like, they were the ones who were in the pot. Like, he was guarding them, and he was like a fortress for them on the move.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like he was for the people of Israel in the wilderness. God is like, yes, Jerusalem is the place where he made his name to dwell, but he is not bound to Jerusalem.
Yeah.
The reason he made his name dwell in Jerusalem is because he's bound to the people.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's like, yeah, I sent them to Babylon, and I'm just going to go be with them, because it's about to go down over here, and I don't want to be here when it goes down. And so he's removing his hand.
Yeah.
And he says, I will gather you from the peoples and assemble you out of the countries. And so there's like scattering and regathering. And that reminds me of, I think it's the end of Hosea chapter 1, where, there's this judgment where, Hosea has these different children. And one of the children's name is Jezreel, which means to scatter.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of Hosea 1, God says, and in the end you will say, great is the day of Jezreel. And there's like this double meaning, because great can mean, wow, that was crazy. And they're like in terror of like the scattering that took place. But then there's also like the positive connotation of like, in the end, they'll look back at that scattering as the best thing that happened to them. It was like the chastening and like hand of God was the best thing it was what they needed. Like, if God had ignored their sin, they would just keep on going in it. But it was him, like, he broke them down and burnt them with fire in order to purge them. And so that's kind of cool. Which then leads to the back half where he just says, I'm going to make a new covenant. It's going to be pretty sweet. And y'all will be done with your foolishness.
Yeah. I had a couple questions for y'all on this back half. One thing I noticed when I was reading, he says, I will give them one heart and give within them a new spirit. I don't know about y'all, but whenever I read that, like, how do I pose this as a question? He's talking to the people as a whole and saying, I will give them one heart. He doesn't say like, because then later on he says, I will give them like a new heart. But here he says, I will give them one heart. Like, what do y'all think he means by that? Like, cause he's saying like, them collectively, I will give them one heart. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I interpret.
Well, it's almost like he says that he's gonna make it to where the hearts of the people are all towards him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, almost, that's kind of what I think of it is.
Well, yeah, because whenever we think of people being like double-hearted or like double-minded, the idea is that they're straddling the line between two things. And we just saw this earlier in the paragraph where you have these people who, on one hand, they feel entitled to God's provision, but on the other hand, they're doing things that are detestable in His eyes. And to where it's like, they want to have their cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
They want to eat their cake and have it too. But God is over here saying, no, like, when I'm done with them, they will have one heart. And the implication is that it is going to be a heart that is aimed in the right direction. Like, it's going to be like David, right? David's whole thing is he was a man after God's own heart. That was what made him unique. And it was that he never looked to the left or right. He had a single line of focus, and it was on Yahweh. And what that meant is that he didn't focus on idols, right? It seems like that's usually what God has in mind whenever he talks about like one-heartedness and like whenever it says David didn't look to the left or right. It's not saying David was perfect, because he wasn't. The thing that made David unique is that he never tolerated any other god. Like he didn't even embrace the idea. He said, "No, Yahweh is my one God, and that is it." And so that seems to be what he has in mind here, because that's that's what he's directly promising. He says, when they come back to the land, idolatry will no longer be the problem. Mm-hmm. There's going to be other problems, but it won't be idolatry. They're gonna stop worshiping Baal, and they're gonna stop worshiping these other gods, and I'm gonna give them one heart. So that's kind of how I interpret it.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was like that or like because of like there's been kind of this like theme throughout of like it hasn't really been very explicit. It's been more of like an implicit thing, but like the idea of like oneness. And so I wasn't sure if like the one heart also could have meant like the people will have one heart, like they're united like in their devotion to God.
I think so.
And it could be like a both thing.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, if everyone has one heart, which is like towards God, then they're also of one heart too.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was trying to figure out the distinction, but I guess it's like because it's a communal repentance, I guess.
Yeah.
Like it's
both sides of the same coin, basically.
Yeah, it's not just like an individual thing, whereas that's kind of how we treat it oftentimes. Like whenever we talk about like the new covenant, we make it very much like individual stuff, where it's like no, it's the movement itself of people. And again, there do seem to be like these these layers of it, because we're going to see a foreshadowing of this. Like whenever they return from exile, idolatry is going to cease to be the problem. But even after that, there's going to be a general sense amongst the Jewish people that the new covenant has not arrived. Yeah. So it's like there's it's kind of like that already but not yet. Like part of it has been fulfilled but not fully, to where they are of one heart in one way, but they're not fully restored to God. Like they've gotten rid of the idols, but they haven't been given the Spirit yet. You know, and so that's kind of like where they're at. But I would see it kind of being the like both things. Yeah,
kind of. It's not either or; it's a both and.
Yeah.
Which what you said kind of brings me to my other question I had here, or I don't know if it's a question or what, but I assume, at least that when most people read through verse 20, they're thinking about like the law, whereas my question would be, I mean, just to kind of make sure we're like thinking about it, I guess. Whenever y'all read verse 20, like, what do y'all think that he's referring to? Because whenever I read it, I'm not entirely sure like that's what he's referring to. Does that make sense what I'm asking? Because, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, I think when in the past when I would have read this, I would assume that he's saying like they haven't been able to obey Torah, right? And so now I'm going to give them the ability to be able to follow Torah, is the way that it would usually be read. Yeah. Whereas I think this time around reading it, I'm not entirely convinced that's what it's referring to.
I think it's language that intentionally calls back to Torah language, to where, because I think the thing is, I think that's how a lot of Jewish people do interpret it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's actually where you're going to run into the divide between like Jews and like the followers of Jesus. Mm-hmm. Because this is something that would like actually stick out to me because we just went through Genesis.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there's this passage where it's in I think it's whenever God's talking, is it to Isaac? But he's talking about Abraham. Because he's talking about how Abraham followed
26:5.
Yeah, so it's in the one chapter about Isaac. And God says to Isaac that Abraham kept, and it might be that exact same.
It's the exact same, yeah.
It's the same words?
Mitzvah and his, I forget the other word.
or something like that. But yeah, so he says that Abraham kept my statutes and my judgments, and then it even says the last one is my Torahs. Like it's like the law, and it's interesting because Abraham, according to God, did all these things, but Abraham did not receive the Torah. Right? Abraham existed long before that. And so I think that it's actually crucial that that shows up before the giving of Torah, because it lets us know that apparently those commands are not like fulfilling Torah is not directly tied to having access to the 613 commands. And so I think that what God is saying here, I think it is tied to Torah, but it isn't tied to walking in obedience to the commands. It is, well, it's the idea of fulfilling it, to where I think this is what Jesus is talking about when he gets to the Sermon on the Mount. He says, I am here to fulfill Torah. And throughout the rest of the sermon, what he does is he explains that it was always more like, it wasn't just about the commands themselves, it was about getting to the heart of the commands and learning to hear God. So the end of the Sermon on the Mount, what does Jesus say? Anybody who hears these words of mine and does them is a wise man who builds his house on the rock. Anybody who hears these words of mine and doesn't do them is a foolish man who builds his house on the sand. And so both people are hearing. The difference is what you do with that. And so it really is about obedience, but the obedience stems from how you're hearing. And so I think this is where, like, how you interpret this verse right here will shape how you respond to Jesus. Because if you think that what God is saying is, I'm going to teach you to obey even this I would agree with. If God says, I will teach you to obey the Torah correctly, that is technically true. But if you're interpreting that as, I will teach you to never fail to obey, like, a single command, that's not what it's saying. Whereas that kind of seems to be how the Jewish people of Jesus' time interpreted it.
Yeah.
They thought that if they could simply keep the Sabbath 1 week, the Messiah is going to show up, and he will teach them to just keep the law perfectly. And that is kind of what Jesus did, but not how they expected. He taught them what true faith looked like, and he got them to the heart of the law, and he also showed us that really we were never able to complete it. Like, we can fulfill it ourselves, right? He came to fulfill it on our behalves, and it's only through following him that we actually walk it. So it's like,
yeah,
you can see where the confusion comes from, because the way that his, like, opponents interpreted it is arguably the much more, like, straightforward and even, like, lazy interpretation. Whereas the way that Jesus and the whole Jesus movement fulfills it is actually a lot more complicated, and it's probably not how you would naturally read this, but I think that one verse in Genesis really is like it's the thing. Like, I'm surprised that there's not places in the New Testament that quote it more.
Yeah.
But it really is the thing that changes things, because we have Abraham being identified as somebody who kept all these things without having ever received the Torah. And so you have to ask, how? And if I remember, in that passage, wasn't it specifically tied to Abraham, like, offering the sacrifice of Isaac? I don't remember. What I can look it up if you wanted to say other stuff.
Well, I was gonna say, and there's also chapter 18 where he, like, when he's talking before, like, Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah, to do justice and righteousness and stuff.
Yeah, and the righteous, like, mitzvah. It's the same word here too as well. But yeah, I thought that was an important clarification to make, because I also think, like, we already kind of mentioned it, but, like, with this whole thing right here, we recognize that, like, this hasn't, like, this was not fully fulfilled when they came back to the land, and so, like, this has a future fulfillment, ultimately, fulfilled in Christ, but so it can't really just refer to, like, the Mosaic covenant per se and the Mosaic law, and so I think that's, like, something that's worth clarifying.
Yeah, so the verse, just so y'all know what we're talking about, it's this is God, like, it's whenever God first shows up to Isaac and speaks to him. And he basically says, as I was with Abraham, I'll be with you. He says, I'll multiply your seed as the stars of heaven, and I will give your seed all these lands, and by your seed all the nations of the earth will be blessed. Because Abraham heard my voice, right? And keep in mind, throughout Deuteronomy, hear, O Israel, hear, O Israel, hear, O Israel. So Abraham did what Israel was called to do, right? He heard God. And he kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. And so the words there are mishmaret, mitzvah, chukah, and Torah. And two of those words are the words that show up here.
Yeah.
And so basically, God is saying that when I come back, I'm going to make Israel actually be like Abraham.
Mhm.
Like they're going to be, I mean, like Jesus will talk about true descendants of Abraham, right? There are, that's like a big thing in the New Testament, that there are, not everybody who's born of Abraham are of Abraham, and not all born of Israel are Israel.
Yeah, the Jews say to him, like, we are sons of Abraham, and he says, if y'all were, y'all would do the things Abraham did. And so the same thing there, like, yeah, he wants to make a nation that is sons of Abraham, but like in the true sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Abraham wasn't simply concerned with wearing tassels and eating kosher food. And I'm not saying those are bad things. I'm just saying that Abraham was concerned with the heart of the issue, which is hearing God. And so that's why God could even tell Abraham to do something that seemed absolutely deplorable, but he would go, and impossible, to where God's like, hey, go sacrifice your son, on whom the whole promise hinges. And Abraham's like, okay. Because it was never simply about checking off boxes, it was about hearing God. And so basically he says, I'm going to create a nation that hears me.
Yeah.
And
then you get to Jesus where he says, like, if it be possible, like, may this cup be removed, but nevertheless your will be done.
Yeah.
So like ultimately he heard God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'm glad you highlighted that thing with verse 20, just because this really, you could see it being a big dividing line between, how we interpret this versus how modern Jews would interpret it, probably vastly different.
Honestly,
because,
probably even modern Christians.
That's true. But I guess how I would argue the apostles probably interpret it versus how modern Jews would, or something like that.
Yeah.
Because one thing that they'll say is if Jesus was the Messiah, then why are Christians so messed up? Because it's not like we're over here being perfectly obedient children of God. Well, it's that's not exactly what's being promised here. It's being promised that we'll be of one heart, and there is this ultimate promise that one day, we will be perfectly obedient.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the essence of what he is saying in this moment. He's going to produce people who are true children of Abraham. And it's not going to be just descendants of blood. It'll be people who have placed their faith in the one who did fulfill the Torah. And so,
yeah. And then another thing with it says, then they will be my people and I shall be their God. We saw this language, all the way back in Exodus, and then we also saw it in Jeremiah. It was mentioned multiple times where God said, he specifically said, before I gave you the law, the first thing I asked of you was, be my people and I will be your God. He specifically says that predates the law. And so it predates the law, the temple, all these things, and that was in the context of them placing their trust in obedience to the law and the temple and stuff.
yeah.
So rewind just a verse back. I will take the heart of stone out of their flesh and give them a heart of flesh. What's going on there? We haven't talked about that yet.
Yeah, I just think it's the, obviously, a body is not going to function properly. If you just think of this just physically, a body is not going to function properly if its heart is not compatible with it, right? A body of flesh cannot live off a heart of stone.
Mm-hmm.
And so the imagery is this, it's just, the most straightforward imagery is just hard-heartedness, right?
Yeah.
It's humans have this heart that God cannot get through. He can't get to them, to where you have these centuries and centuries and centuries of him trying to reach the people. They refuse to listen. It's their hearts are here, but they have built these impenetrable walls that even he can't get through. And so the only way to fix it is by just getting rid of the stony heart and giving them a heart that actually works with their body, because he's the one who created them. He knows what they need. And this heart of stone is not working out for them, because a body of flesh with a heart of stone is just a dead body, right? And it's good for nothing. Mm-hmm. Whereas if we are going to live as God intended, then we need hearts that match the bodies he gave us.
Mm-hmm.
And if our hearts don't line up, then what are we doing? And so he says, I'm going to basically do things to cause my people to fulfill what I created them to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how I interpret that.
Yeah. The reason I also bring that up is because, like we mentioned earlier, how we have that tendency to separate flesh and spirit.
Mm-hmm.
I think, if we just we're looking at this text, I think if you ask someone like, what if having a heart of flesh was a good or bad thing, I feel like people would tend to say like bad, like you want like a heart of spirit or something. I don't know how you put that, but like it seems like in this context, the heart of flesh is the good thing to have, and so like it's just probably worth like addressing. Another like thought I just kind of had come to me. I'm trying to think. This is probably a stretch, so it probably isn't a thing there, but the imagery of like taking like, because your heart is like in your side here, it says that he'll take something out of the flesh and replace it with flesh. I'm wondering if there's like something going on with like Genesis there.
Like calling back to Adam and Eve?
Yeah. Right. But like I don't know how that would like fit in besides like, aside from like there being a new spirit being like their helper, and like that would tie into like John.
I mean, no, I can see it being that just because even when you look at how God first called Israel, he is their husband and they're his wife. Mm-hmm. But now it's almost like you have this reverse thing where it's the wife who is in rebellion, and it's like if you go back to Genesis, it is a rib being removed, so it's like the same placement of my part. Yeah. It is the rib being removed from the man that is used to make the woman, and so the woman is in many ways like the heart of the man, right? And so therefore, a man and a woman leave each other and they become one flesh. Well, God and Israel are meant to be a husband and wife, but the wife has abandoned him, and if the woman is the heart of the man, then the man is the heart of the woman. And so her heart is stone. So he's going to remove her stone, right? And he's going to give himself back to her, right? So that they are now literally one flesh again, to where the heart and the body are compatible again. And then what does he say? Then they will be my people, and I shall be their God. And that's marriage imagery, right? Like Song of Solomon. I am my beloved, as my beloved is mine. And so I don't think it's like a stretch to say that this is it could be even alluding back to Genesis 2, because even in context, what is he about to do to Israel to cause this to happen? He's sending them into exile. He is killing them, or metaphorically putting them to sleep. Right? He is, right now they're awake. He's going to put them to sleep to perform surgery so that whenever he wakes them back up again, they have a new heart. And that's just like with Adam, where he put him to sleep, he woke up, and he has a wife. And so I don't think it's a stretch. It's probably one that most people, like, you kind of have to learn how like Hebrew people tell stories and stuff to like make the connection, but I don't think it's too much of a stretch.
Just because like there's like all like the bio or anatomy of it, like the heart being where it is, and like taking it out and specifically like replacing it with flesh. It made me think of it, but I wasn't sure because like I wasn't sure. But.
Yeah, and it might not be a specific allusion to it, but at the very least it works. Like towards you're not going to arrive at any incorrect like positions there. Like it's all consistent with what God is communicating, and if anything, it just makes it richer. To where is that what Ezekiel meant? No, but could God, speaking through Ezekiel, have known that someday people would make that connection? Yeah, possibly. So
fair enough.
And then verse 21, he just clarifies like the heart thing. It's about idolatry, right? Yeah. As for those whose hearts walk after detestable things, so those who look to the left and right, I will give to them what is due for their way on their heads. So this isn't all good news. There's going to be bad news for the people who refuse to repent.
Yeah, exactly. And then God leaves. He says the Spirit lifted me up and brought me in a vision by the Spirit of God to the exiles in Chaldea.
The verses 22 and 23 are just so sad. Like the cherubim lift up their wings with the wheels beside them, and the glory of God of Israel hovered over them. So like it just feels like it's happening in slow motion to where like we've seen God leave the Holy of Holies, he went through the threshold, he went to the gate, and now here he is he's just like hovering in place. And it's like maybe I'm just like reading emotion into it, but it's almost like he just doesn't want to leave. But like he just said all these things and he's just hovering there. And then it says, the glory of Yahweh went up from the midst of the city and stood over the mountain which is east of the city. And so he goes through the valley. He's on top of the Mount of Olives. Interestingly, this is the same place where Jesus will ascend from hundreds of years later. And according to Scripture, it's the same place where Jesus will, technically, it does not say he will return there, but that is where we see him at some point in the story.
Oh, okay.
There are some people who argue that maybe he'll descend somewhere else. But that's another thing for another time. Actually, Jackson County, Missouri. Yeah. No.
It's also like even just like the narrative, like, not narrative force, like the rhetorical force of like the specific structure here. It's where like we had this whole thing with like God leaving, and then in the middle of that, right before the end, is where he puts this message of like hope, and then only after that does he mention him leaving. It's like, I don't know. There's like something about like the structure there specifically. Where, like he could have had that finished up and then said like, but then I'll come back. So like he said, I'll come back, but then he goes back to him leaving.
And that's kind of why I think I alluded to like David fleeing Absalom, because earlier I joked around. This is kind of like Arnold saying I'll be back, but it doesn't have that same emotion. Like whenever he says that in Terminator, it's like this like, yeah, don't mess with me, I'll be back here. That's not quite what God's going for. It's more like David, where whenever David's leaving, he's weeping. But even as people are talking to him, he's like, I'll be back. Like, he knows that God's going to be faithful and God's going to bring him back and restore the throne. But it doesn't make it easier, you know, to where there's like this like bittersweet where God's like immediately before this, God says he's going to judge everybody. He's leaving. Ezekiel says, but God, you can't kill everybody. And God just takes a moment and says, Ezekiel, I have a plan. This is part of the plan. In the long run, it will all work out. But I have to go.
Yeah.
And then so where it's like, it is really good news, but the good news is like sandwiched in between terrible stuff, to where it's like it's not like, this is not a sermon that would preach well on most Sundays. You know, usually you try to start light and you end light, and then you put like the hard stuff in the middle. This is the opposite, to where it's like you got the hard stuff on both sides, and then the good news is like in the middle. That I don't know.
Or even worse, it's like toward right at the very end, but then like it's almost like a tease where it's like you think it's gonna end on a good note, and then they just gotta throw it like at the very end.
Yeah, we've had like 10 3/4 chapters of just bad news, and then you have like 5 verses of like good stuff, and you're like, oh sweet, is that the note we're gonna leave it on? No. And then God just leaves, and it's like it
makes it hit harder.
Yeah. And this is where it cuts to Daniel, and he's like, yeah, we got a long road ahead of us. Just the long and winding road. I do find it very interesting that like you have this repeated like motif throughout Scripture of just the Mount of Olives to Jerusalem, like that, just that journey. Like you have Solomon being coronated, riding through the Mount of Olives on a donkey into Jerusalem, and you have David leaving Jerusalem, going up the Mount of Olives into the wilderness. And now you have God going that same journey. And then you have Jesus who rides into, like, to where you just have, like, this one location where people keep going back and forth. And even during the, like, the final week of Jesus' life, we often associate this primarily with the triumphal entry, but every single day of Passion Week, Jesus is making the same journey. To where it's like, the Gospels make it, like, and very intentionally say, and he departed and spent the night in Bethany. And then he went to Jerusalem. And to where every day, Jesus is following the same trajectory, going into the temple, out of the temple. It's just literally God himself going in, leaving. And then it finally culminates on, like, what I guess it's Tuesday, where he says, y'all will not see me until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And then he just leaves. And then he literally goes to where God is at right now, and he begins talking to his disciples about how Jerusalem is going to be destroyed again. Right? Not the destruction that Ezekiel is talking about, but another one by the Romans. And it's it's just interesting to me that same thing happens so much. You never hear about like the other sides of Jerusalem. Like there's 4 sides here, but it's always Mount of Olives to the temple.
Yeah, you think part of it's because of it being like east of Jerusalem, so it's like the whole like going east.
Yeah, it probably calls a lot back to just
Eden.
Genesis.
Yeah.
Or you could argue, well, yeah. But, it's 9:40, so we should probably start wrapping up.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, you know, I was gonna see what time it was to see if you have time for chapter 12, or do you just want to wrap up here?
No, we should probably wrap up.
Yeah.
So we've gone about 40 minutes over.
Oh, it's 9:40.
9:40, yeah.
Oh.
Not 8:40.
Dang. Okay.
I mean, I'd be down to keep on going, but I think we should
yeah.
probably just like hang out or something.
Yeah. No, for sure. On that note,
Yeah.
I mean that pretty much covers everything.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that any of y'all wanted to say about the chapters? Applications, cool thoughts that are relevant to the chapters.
They said that are irrelevant at first. I was like,
I feel like there was something else.
Sure, I can get us on a tangent.
What was it?
Yeah, sure.
I think there was like one other like Revelation connection, like to like chapter 8, to where like it seemed like maybe it was drawing from these chapters, but I'm trying to think what it was.
I'm not sure.
It wasn't like anything big. It was just kind of like we had chapter 7 already being referenced, or like a chapter 7 connection, so it seemed like maybe it was like.
You'd think I'd be able to help you because I've been in Revelation for the last like 3 months, but I'm still in chapter 2. So.
Oh my gosh.
Uh,
Did I read it?
Sure.
About it? I think we already mentioned this, but an angel goes and gets coals off the censer of the altar and sprinkles it on the earth. So it's the same imagery from earlier. That's pretty much it. Any other thoughts?
I'm just tired.
I didn't realize we went that much over.
No, I was.
I
I started like zoning out about 9:15. I want to say.
That's all right. Okay. On that note, does someone want to pray us out?
Am I a favor or should I just do it?
You can do it.
Dear God, thank you for allowing us to gather here tonight, and you've been shown the wisdom to guide us through and give us unique insight in this chapter. I hope and pray that we learned a lot, and there's a lot we can apply to our lives from this chapter. That's about it. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.